No sex with men. No giving birth. No dating men. No marrying men. These are the 4 hardcore tenets of the 4B movement, a radical feminist movement, not a lesbian movement that originated in South Korea. Sounds a bit extreme, right? And it definitely is. But is it an extreme reaction to something else extreme? Like, say, a lot of shitty treatment from a lot of shitty dudes? It definitely is. Unlike feminist movements in the US and Europe, feminism in South Korea is more recent. Started online, gradually worked its way into daily life for its adherents. Many, though, after it arrived, continued to stay in the shadows with their beliefs because being openly feminist in South Korea can lead to serious public backlash and to losing your job. Being called a feminist there is definitely a slur, which says a lot about the culture. Although South Korea is definitely a very modern society in many ways with advanced technology and globally popular pop culture, it also has a very long history of intense gender discrimination that has permeated all aspects of South Korean society. Women in South Korea statistically face greater job discrimination, gender inequality in pay and promotions, and a lack of representation in corporate and government leadership. On top of systemic issues, they also deal with rampant sexism, sexual harassment, sexual violence, and online hate. The recent 4B movement emerged as a response to all that shit. Although it is largely regarded as a fringe extremist movement, one that is also heavily mocked here in the US, after digging into its roots, I found it to be 100% legitimate. It's not just simply a bunch of women who just randomly decided one day for no good reason whatsoever, without any valid criticisms, you know what? I fucking hate dudes. And I'm avoiding them forever. But that's how a lot of online commentators have dismissed it for, laughs and likes and comments, engagement. Despite being continually under attack, some online feminist groups in South Korea have succeeded at bringing feminism and gender inequality into everyday conversations. And the 4B movement has gone global, particularly in the US. This week, we'll cover the societal factors that influence the formation of the 4B movement, go over a timeline of key events, the history of feminism in South Korea, see how the movement jumped across the Pacific to gain followers here in the U.S., in a social commentary, cultural, historical, stepping outside the box to learn a little something new, Lucifina Wept edition of Timesuck.
This is Michael McDonald, and you're listening to Timesuck.
You're listening to Timesuck.
Happy Monday, happy Monday. Welcome back to the Code of the Curious. I got a lot of feedback that people wanted me to start the show that way. So many messages. Oh, God, that's the best thing I ever heard. I like it when you sing at the start like that, in that really cool way. No. I'm Dan Cummins, Suck Daddy, 800 million K VIP Top Immortal Warlock, Lavelle Thrive brand promoter, and you are listening to Timesuck. Hail Nimrod, hail Zafina, praise be to Good Boy Bojangles, and glory be to Triple M. No announcements, other than I hope that you're doing great amidst the nonstop, one battle after another like chaos of the present age. Let's just jump in. To explain the 4B movement to a primarily American audience, the first thing I'll be doing today is taking a second container of Thrive Plus expanded cognition capsules. Woo! All of them. I took the first container's worth about an hour ago. I am literally floating at least 6 inches above my fucking chair right now. My mouth is closed. Microphone is off, not recording. I am mentally projecting this content directly into your brain. Can't fucking wait to find out what happens when I double up. I might be able to record this episode after you've heard it. Thrive is life. If you're not thriving, you're dying! No. Still thinking about all that Thrive, though, from last week's episode. Clearly. Anyway. I'll start today by defining 4B, then continue with an overview of certain cultural aspects of South Korea that have led people to want to join this extreme movement, followed by a timeline of key events in the country's modern history that have impacted the feminist movement, and then after the timeline, we will explore 4B's jump over into America. So let's get going. The 4 tenets of 4B, or the 4 no's, all start with the Korean prefix of bi, which means no in certain contexts. The 4 no's are, and I'm going to do my best with Korean, but after watching a fucking ton of videos in Korean, videos of people going back and forth between English and Korean, still tricky for me. No surprises there. Anyway, the 4 no's are, with those B's sounding like P's, P-sexu, no sex with men, P-chulsan, no giving birth, P-yan ae, no dating men, and P-han, no marriage with men. This movement, which sounds kind of like a 4-H club, but is way fucking different. Started online in South Korea in the 2010s, primarily on Twitter, and a South Korean website called WOMAD, a forum site I will share more info about later. With the help of social media, 4B spread internationally, eventually gaining a foothold in the U.S. due to our country's current cultural climate. Well, that's actually oversimplifying it quite a bit, but, that's the gist. It's important to note that the 4B movement has never been more than a fringe extremist movement in South Korea, the U.S., or anywhere else, and that a lot of TikTokers have made it seem a lot bigger, a lot more widespread than it actually is, because that's what those influencers do, exaggerate. It likely has thousands of followers, not millions. Exactly how many is unknown. Not like you can easily access some kind of roll call, some true number of members of a particular ideology, since you don't have to publicly register as a member of an ideological movement to be a part of it. But anecdotally, doesn't seem to be a ton of members. However, there's also a lot of pressure not to openly declare oneself a 4B adherent, at least in Korea, since even being viewed as a more traditional feminist in South Korea generally met with a lot of scorn. So why are we talking about this today? Well, I was just curious about it. Cult of the curious and all. But also I wanted to share information about the 4B movement because I think we could all learn some lessons here. Maybe correct some preconceived notions about some shit. While some like to knee-jerk dismiss it as lunacy, I'll be sharing that particular hot take in the Idiots of the Internet segment after the timeline. I don't find it crazy at all. Once I understood why this movement originated. Turns out a bunch of people don't just swear off an entire gender, especially one that they're attracted to, for no good reason. Let's now briefly discuss the cultural basis behind each principle of 4B, starting with P-han, no marriage with men. A 2022 survey of unmarried South Koreans aged 19 to 34 found that 69.7% of women, compared to 79.8% of men, expressed a desire to marry in the future. So almost exactly a 10% difference. And why do some of those women, assuming that all the women surveyed here are heterosexual and attracted to men, why do they not want to get married? Well, according to numerous surveys, Korean men are literally the ugliest dudes on earth. And they have the tiniest, most shriveled up dicks and the stinkiest nuts. I didn't know that. No, I'm pretty sure there are not surveys for that kind of information. No, 4B followers say the movement protects them from the harmful risks of marriage, such as domestic violence and an unequal distribution of unpaid domestic labor. Are these real problems in South Korea for women to be worried about? No, let me mansplain you ladies for a second. Of course not. It's hysteria. Bunch of girls being silly, because that's their nature, and they can't help it. They should just go shop, clear up their heads. And I think that about wraps up this episode. No, please don't turn it off. I was just being a silly goose. I'm the silly one, me. No, these concerns are very valid. They're a problem for women of any nation to be at least a little concerned about. There isn't a single culture on earth that doesn't have problems with domestic violence. And there also is not a culture on earth where men aren't the primary perpetrators of domestic violence and women aren't the primary targets. And that's not just some feminist hot take. That is not virtue signaling, despite the eye roll statements like that seem to elicit in what I consider to be a disturbing amount of people. That's an empirically based take. That's loads and loads of evidence backing that up. Crime databases, polls, surveys sitting out there for anyone to find and analyze and see for themselves. Also, marital violence, the most prevalent form of family violence in South Korea, as it is in many countries, and it mostly follows the pattern of men attacking women. According to some new findings released this past December by the Korea Women's Development Institute, based on nationwide surveys that were conducted in both 2021 and 2024, 19.2% of South Korean women reported experiencing at least one form of intimate partner violence, at least once in their lifetime. Other studies have skewed even higher. It's hard to get an accurate number because in South Korean culture, marital violence is still largely regarded as a private family issue rather than a legal crime or a social issue, very taboo to discuss publicly. It is almost certainly wildly underreported, even in random anonymous surveys and studies. According to one study cited in the 2013 book, Family Violence from a Global Perspective, 50% of Korean adults reported that they did not wish to call the police for an incident of marital violence because, quote, it is a family matter. So whatever the true number is, safe to say it's very high. And now what about this unequal distribution of unpaid domestic labor claim? Actually, before I get into that, I should say, I pointed out those stats to show that's a good reason to not want to get married if you're afraid of your spouse beating the shit out of you. And now for this next thing about unequal distribution of unpaid domestic labor. When I wrote, "Are women still expected to take care of the home in South Korea?" When I put those words into my web browser search bar, my laptop literally shocked me. Then some kind of AI voice came out of my speaker saying, "Of course, they are women. It is their primal duty to submit. They are domestic playthings built to serve, mindless bicycles to be ridden. Grow a set of nuts, you fucking soy boy cuck." And I thought that was aggressive. I don't remember buying my computer from the Heritage Foundation. But for real, in heterosexual South Korean households, women still almost always perform a disproportionate amount of unpaid labor. It is expected. According to a study connected and conducted in October of 2024, published by the Korean academic journal Social Science and Medicine, married women in Korea do on average over 7 times more chores than married men. Fuck yeah! I mean, what? Hey, that's not cool. On average, married women in the study spent 2 hours and 37 minutes per day on housework. Meanwhile, their husbands spent just 21 minutes. Ooh. Not like women don't work outside the home over there either. Over 60% of married women do. According to data from Korea's Ministry of Data and Statistics, 64.3% of married women between the ages of 15 and 54 who live with children under the age of 18 were employed in the first half of 2025. But the chore disparity still exists for them, and it continues into retirement when both people are not working. And this disparity is correlated with rising amounts of depression amongst married Korean women, depression that is lessened whenever their spouses chip in. Some 2024 research findings revealed that for every hour each week that a husband spent doing some household chores, his wife's risk of developing depression dropped by 12%. Shit, I can never let Lindsay hear this episode. She does way more chores than I do, but in my defense, she cares a lot more about the house being clean than I do. If it was up to me, our house would just be, still a house, just, maybe messier, dirtier, a lot of dust. In reality, I do know that one day when I'm working less hours, I will have more chores awaiting me. And in all seriousness, when I have had periods of working way less, I've done more chores. I actually can't believe that some people, too many people, get away with barely working and barely doing chores. Like, what the fuck exactly are you contributing to your partnership, you bum? Okay, let's move on to the next B that sounds like a P. P. Chulsan. No giving birth. A 2022 survey of unmarried South Koreans ages 19 to 34 found that only 55.3% of women compared to 70.5% of men indicated desire for having a child. Bigger disparity, right? Almost 15%. And that is scary. If only half of women end up having kids, and they on average don't have more than 4 to replace themselves and their partner and another couple not having kids, South Korea is going to have a major population demographic crisis on its hands that will devastate its economy and society at large. Sounds like about 15% of Korean men, at least, better figure out how to start shitting out some kids. Come on, scientists, make butt babies great again. Not sure that slogan makes any sense, but I do like the way it rolls off the tongue. Many South Korean women in recent years have become reluctant to have children due to a lack of workplace accommodations for mothers, which means if we can't have butt babies, we need robots over there. When are robots going to start doing all the chores and raising the kids already? And mom and dad can both work if they want. Whoever can invent a kick-ass robot nanny first is going to make so much money. Over 40% of South Korean women end up taking an extended career break after having kids, and those who do try and go back to work find that they often struggle to progress in their careers. Work-life balance feels nearly impossible in South Korea for many people, especially for mothers. South Korea's standard work week is 52 hours compared to the 40 here in the U.S. And not that long ago, back in 2023, it almost became way longer. Korea's government actually proposed extending the work week to 69 hours. That is absurd. You lazy fucks in your 52-hour work week. Must be nice. Only working a little over 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday. Not working at all on the weekend. You know what? Enough of this hippie shit. There's no good reason you can't get off your lazy asses and work 10 hours a day, Monday through Saturday, and then practically get Sunday completely off when you only have to clock in 9 hours. According to numerous studies, in practice, most workers put in more hours than the legal limits, so in reality, a lot of people's work weeks are actually probably approaching 70 hours already. As of 2023, on average, South Koreans worked 1,915 hours per year, the fifth highest among countries in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. By comparison, Americans worked an average of 1,791 hours annually. And I don't know about you, but I feel like, we Americans work on average way too damn much. South Korean workers consistently describe a post-World War II culture in which overtime is ubiquitous. Workers are expected to attend mandatory after-work team dinners and drinking sessions, and employees feel compelled to stay at the office until they see their boss leave, regardless of whether they have finished their tasks or not. It is just expected to stay late. Sounds terrible, and seems like it is. Many researchers feel that this normalized workaholism is directly correlated to South Korea having the highest suicide rate amongst developed countries in the OECD, with over 24 self-inflicted deaths per 100,000 people per year, almost double the U.S.'s rate of just under 14 per 100,000 people per year. Researchers also think it's directly connected to the nation's demographic crisis. South Korea has the world's lowest fertility rate at 0.78 children per woman in her childbearing years, meaning there are a lot more deaths than births. And online estimates for 2025 have the rate looking even worse. They got a lot of shit going on right now in South Korea. I had no idea. Refocusing all of this on women's roles in the workplace now, in the go, 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 grind, grind, grind culture of South Korea, women cannot keep up with the hourly pace of their male colleagues and advance their careers and also get pregnant, take time off for maternity leave, and spend some time with their kids growing up. Having kids as a woman in this culture often equates to getting passed up for promotions and never being able to keep up with male colleagues. These numbers help illustrate why many 4B followers focus on not having kids if they'd like to achieve any kind of financial independence. And financial independence, a very tricky prospect overall in South Korea, for everybody, kids or no kids. South Korea currently ranks among the least affordable countries in the world regarding the ratio of average wages to housing costs. Reports in late 2025 placed South Korea around the 10th to 13th least affordable country in terms of property price to income ratios. The average cost of living per month in South Korea, $1,134 US, is 55% less expensive than in the US, which is $2,516. But the average Korean worker, despite working a lot more hours, makes far less than half the money of their American counterpart. Because it's so damn hard for South Koreans to support themselves with a single income, 4B proponents encourage women to save up money for independent life while living with their folks if possible, and living together with other 4B women to cut down on costs. Some 4B groups even host events with finance experts to help women learn how to save and invest. And also, tell adherents how important reassessing their role in the workplace and society at large is, how it can help make things better for women going forward. Han, a math tutor who owns her own tutoring company, told New York Magazine's The Cut, when women are more economically influential, then it's possible that the political parties will listen to women as important voters. But until then, I feel like women will still be utilized. Their bodies will be utilized to reproduce. Hail Lucifina. Right, she loves this episode, by the way. Okay, now let's move on to the final two B's. It sound like P's for a quick beat, just before getting into the beginnings of the formation of the movement. Pion Ae, and P-sexu, no dating men and no marrying men. Women in the 4B movement see romantic and sexual relationships with men as an extension of the patriarchal family structure that they feel, with a lot of evidence backing up this feeling, that's fucking them over, that marriage only reinforces gender roles that they are trying to break out of. The 4B movement started to emerge in South Korean feminist circles on Twitter around 2017. The impetus was the high-profile murder of a young woman at a train station in 2016. The 23-year-old woman was stabbed in a public bathroom in Gangnam, a bustling, bougie, high-rent district of Seoul, an area made famous in 2012 by singer Psy's smash hit Gangnam Style. Holy shit, my kids loved that song when it came out, right? Such an earworm.
오빤 Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style.
I think it holds up.
오빤 Gangnam Style.
It's hard not to move.
Gangnam Style. 오빤 Gangnam Style.
It's so ridiculously catchy.
오빤 Gangnam Style.
For months, every time that song came on, little Kyler and little Monroe would just immediately start doing that little dance he does. So cute. I would do it too. Anyway, back to some not cute news now. The 34-year-old killer, who lurked around for about an hour waiting for a victim he wanted to attack, claimed that he stabbed the woman whom he did not know because women had always ignored him. He said he had felt ignored and belittled by women his entire life. Police said the suspect had no fixed address and supported himself by working part-time as a waiter. He'd also been hospitalized in the past for mental health problems, including schizophrenia, on numerous occasions. Much to the shock and outrage of the public, he was not charged with a hate crime. He was charged, but just they didn't add, hate crime there. Women in South Korea, fucking outraged. Lee Jae-hee, a culinary student, seen placing flowers at a memorial for the slain woman, explained to a reporter doing a story for the LA Times why this particular murder led to such outrage. Of course, there have been plenty of murders before, said Lee, but this case was different. This time a woman was killed just because she was a woman. While the slain seemed to have been the spark that set the 4B movement on fire, it had, of course, been smoldering for quite some time previous to that for other reasons. The movement emerged as a reaction to other social issues in the country, primarily a persistent culture of misogyny. Misogyny, such a fucking problem in South Korea, that it was at the heart of Korea's 2022 presidential elections. To quote a 2022 BBC article, Park Min-young, 29, spends most of his day talking to angry young men in Seoul. His fingers relentlessly tap the keyboard as he replies to dozens of their messages at his desk in the center of a busy campaign office for one of South Korea's main presidential candidates, Yoon Suk-yeol. Nearly 90% of men in their 20s are anti-feminist or do not support feminism, he tells me. Don B. Wang, a member of the feminist group Ha'il, told NPR in 2022 that femi, short for feminist, is used derogatorily to label any person interested in women's empowerment, that being asked if you are a femi is on par with being asked if you are crazy, if you are mentally ill. We got a lot of those people over here, too, who think like that. South Korea seems to have more of those dudes per capita, though. The country has one of the worst women's rights on record in the developed world, and yet it was disgruntled young men who were the focus of the country's presidential election. Many of them did not see feminism as a fight for equality. Instead, they resented it. They viewed it as a form of reverse discrimination, a movement designed to take away their jobs and take away other opportunities. We definitely have a lot of those dudes here. Dudes who only see what affects them. They don't care what affects, other people. These attitudes seen in 2022 were a discouraging development for the tens of thousands of young women who had taken to the streets of Seoul in 2018 to protest and shout "Me Too" after some high-profile sexual assault and sexual harassment cases over there. Also, some spy camera crimes known as molka made the news. Molka crimes. These are so skeevy. In South Korea, molka refers to filming women's bodies without their consent. Tiny little spy cameras are used in public bathrooms, as in placed, underneath like the toilet lid for some up close and personal shots, or in the showers and around the beds of hotel rooms across the nation to do this. And then the images and or videos are distributed on encrypted social media platforms like Telegram. Then they often end up on various porn sites as well. Almost 6,500 guys were caught either hiding cameras or selling the images/videos in 2017 alone. And an untold amount of people saw what they distributed. A number, I'm guessing, definitely in the millions. Possibly many, many, many millions. Many of the women who had had nude photos and videos taken of them without their knowledge were also minors. The whole situation, almost as bad as, the current Epstein situation here in America. The tens of millions of people right now just seem to not care about, which is fucking insane to me. What happened to "we must protect the children"? I don't remember getting the memo that sentiment was swapped out for "we must protect the pedos." Got to check my spam folder, see what's going on. Anyway, crimes like these, Molka and the Epstein situation and the apathy surrounding it only happen on a large scale in cultures that largely do not respect women. Ask Lucifina if you don't believe me. Shit like that poured gasoline on the growing 4B fire, a fire that burned in the same place as previous feminist movement fires had burned in South Korea. 4B had branched off from South Korea's Me Too movement, inspired by the same shit, that happened here in the U.S., due to the same kind of fucked up creeps causing the same kind of fucked up problems. 4B also emerged from the Escape the Corset movement, which started over there in 2016. The corset is a metaphor for societal mechanisms designed to repress women, including South Korea's strict beauty standards, which heavily influenced the culture. South Korea has the 10th largest beauty market globally and is the world's 3rd largest cosmetics exporter. What does that mean? It means there's a lot of pressure on Korean women to maintain a certain idealized weight and beauty regimen, to have flawless skin, etc. Women in South Korea also have one of the highest rates of cosmetic surgery per capita in the world. Estimates suggest that roughly 1/3 to 1/2 of all South Korean women between the ages of 19 and 29 in Seoul have already undergone at least one cosmetic procedure. It's highly normalized and actually often considered a standard high school graduation gift. How fucked of a message is that? Happy 18th birthday, sweetie! Now let's plump up those lips and tits so that someone's going to want you. Procedures are also seen by many as a necessary step for improving career prospects. Also fucked. No boss is going to want to stare at that flat of an ass, sweetie. Oh, we got to pop that out. The Escape the Corset movement started in 2016, called for women to free themselves from sexual, social, bodily, psychological oppression. Followers were urged to avoid getting cosmetic procedures, to reject lengthy, expensive, not always actually healthy skincare and makeup routines, to avoid buying trendy clothing said to perpetuate rampant consumerism and misogynistic social norms. This movement was heavily mocked by the overall mainstream culture. Fortunately, Thrive is supposed to be coming out with a new derma fusion technology, DFT, DTF, Hottie Boom Body Patch for both men and women that eliminate the need for cosmetic surgery and skincare routines. Hell yeah! You just put a few patches on your face and chest, and within minutes, a legion of tiny little Thrive demons starts to eat up some of your soul energy and transform it into dark magic that makes you super fucking hot and desirable. And the best part? The only side effect is that you completely lose your humanity and any chance of a reward in the afterlife. Fuck tomorrow! Be hot now! A single day of Thrive hotness is worth an eternity of average ugly! If you're not thriving, you're dying! Okay. That's probably too much. Probably just need to take a couple dozen of my Thrive Enthusiasm patches off. Now that we know, and if you're like, what the fuck is he talking about? That was the Thrive stuff is from last week. Now that we know a bit about some feminist movements that help inspired the 4B movement, let's take a look at broader cultural issues that have inspired South Korea's feminist movement overall. One of our main sources for the following research was the book Flowers of Fire, the inside story of South Korea's feminist movement and what it means for women's rights worldwide by Hao Won-young. Young is a former Seoul correspondent for the AFP news agency out of France. Used to report frequently on trailblazing South Korean feminists. And while she was doing that, she often received messages from people around the world who wanted to know more about South Korea. She was asked if there was an English book about what was going on in the country, which did not exist, so she decided to write one herself. I love it. Flowers of Fire portrays the lives of people who led the feminist movement in South Korea from 2015 to 2021. As Young wrote in the introduction to Flowers of Fire, South Korea is the world's 10th largest economy, a tech giant that is home to Samsung, the top smartphone maker internationally, as well as some of the fastest internet connection speeds and densest high-speed railway networks on the planet. It is also a cultural juggernaut whose dramas, for example Squid Game, and music stars, for example BTS, have enormous social influence and huge global followings. But behind the facade of its economic, technological, and cultural dominance lies a history of deep-seated gender discrimination that, despite all the country's modern advances and reputation, has changed relatively little over the years. Right? She's right. South Korea has had the single largest gender pay gap in the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development's annual survey every year since it joined in 1996. In 2022, Korea's female workers were paid on average 31.2% less than male counterparts. Same job, a third less pay. Cool. Korea also has remained at the bottom of the economics Korea has also remained at the bottom of the Economist's, that publication's glass ceiling index since its annual measure of the, quote, role and influence of women in the workforce was launched in 2013. UK's The Guardian echoed this reality in a recent article from September of 2025, writing, on the surface, South Korea appears a hypermodern society, defined by its positive contributions to global pop culture, cutting-edge technology, and sleek urban landscapes. But beneath this veneer lies a widening gender divide that seems to belong to another era. Among nations of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the country ranks first for women's tertiary education attainment, yet maintains the bloc's largest gender pay gap. Women remain largely excluded from leadership roles, and South Korea consistently ranks last in measures of workplace gender equality. While the country leads the world in internet connectivity and high-tech innovation, these same digital spaces have become breeding grounds for some of the most toxic anti-feminist communities, turning virtual hatred into real-world violence. Starting to understand why some Korean women are like, you know what? Fuck these dudes. But, like, not actually fuck them. Like, not ever. So much angry, bitter incel energy over there. The Economist has described the obstacles faced by working women in Korea as a ceiling that appears to be made of bulletproof glass. Nearly 70% of the companies listed on South Korea's stock markets have no female executives. Zero. Women make up just 19% of the government's parliamentary seats, despite being about half of the population. According to a recent online job portal survey of over 2,000 men and women, half of the women had been asked gender-based questions in interviews, such as, do you have a boyfriend? Do you plan to marry? When do you plan to have kids? Imagine being asked that in a job interview. So are you fucking anybody right now? What? No, you creep. Sorry, women, that there are so many creepy dudes in the world. Seriously. Sorry that there have always been so many creepy dudes. And thank you to all the parents, all the moms and dads who make sure and raise sons who are not those creepy dudes. Why can't more guys just fucking jerk off when they're horny and nobody wants to fuck them? Right? It's not hard. I mean, it is hard at first. And then it's not hard if you do it right. Now it's corny, but I kind of like it. But jerking off is easy and fun. Or so I've heard when I listen back to recordings I've made of myself doing it. What? But for real, it's great. Just get a good lotion, comfy chair, little privacy, eat a couple Thrive self-love gummies, and treat yourself. Too much personal info? Thought this was a safe space. In a separate survey of workers commissioned by South Korea's Human Rights Council, nearly 70% of female respondents said that they had been asked during job interviews about whether they had a child or had a plan to get married and have kids. The percentage of men who were asked such questions, far lower. Then, if they do get pregnant, Korean women routinely complain that they feel highly pressured to leave work after they have kids. And not like leave as in maternity leave. Leave as in just like, get the fuck out of here and don't come back. If they want to come back later, they report having a difficult time getting hired. If they can find a job, it is often a job that pays far less than the one they had before they had a kid. And now, to be fair to Korean men, not all of the shift away from them has had to do with attitudes towards and treatment of women. Some of it has been purely financial. Back in the late 80s and 90s, Korean women's perceptions of marriage and motherhood started to shift away from traditional duties, especially due to South Korea's financial crisis in 1997 and 1998. More women needed to work, more women began to find career goals equally or more important and fulfilling than marriage. And thanks to that fulfillment being reported by more and more women, and women working being more and more normalized, college admissions for women began to increase. They were 7.9% higher than for men per 2019 statistics. That increase has yet to be reflected in the labor market, though. It's actually been met with resistance and anger. Competition for both university spots and job positions has led to increased tensions between men and women in Korea. In online forums and on social media, men have started calling college-educated women kimchi women, referring to, quote, the stereotype of Korean women as selfish, vain, obsessed with themselves, while exploiting their partners, according to feminist scholar Lee Sol-young. However, despite all this, author Ha-won Young notes that South Korea is not the worst place in the world for women. South Korean women do have good access to education and healthcare compared to most other nations. Korean women actually have some of the longest lifespans in the world. And at least women are talking about all this in South Korea and forming movements and protesting and fighting for change. Women's rights groups, from the Me Too movement to 4B, have been fighting for harsher prosecution of men accused of sexual misconduct, greater access to abortion rights. They're pushing back against the beauty standards for women I've mentioned with some success. The Me Too movement has been widely successful at bringing conversations about misogyny, violence, and discrimination into daily life, conversations that hopefully will lead to more and more change. Okay, let's move on now to a new section of this suck. In order to understand why misogyny is so pervasive in South Korea, we need to look at the country's past. According to Young, the author, under the country's deep-rooted Confucian culture, women had long been considered inferior to men, an ideology also known by the idiomatic expression Namjun Yupi, literally man high, woman low. My God, it's pretty fucking direct. A woman's social standing was largely defined by her relations to men, an obedient daughter to her father, a chaste wife to her husband, a self-sacrificing mother to her son. These values, part of the official governing ideology of the Joseon Kingdom from 1392 to 1897, the last dynasty before Reformation in the 20th century, remained a strong force in public and family lives even in the modern era and continued to permeate through the national psyche, laws, and customs. In this atmosphere, sending girls to school and subsequently allowing them more freedom in life had been considered not only a waste, but also a risk for the family's reputation. Man, the more things change, the more they stay the same, huh? One of the great irritations of my life is how resistant so many people are to change. When that change doesn't, make life worse for them, actually, but does make life better for somebody else. Who fucking cares how shit has been done? If you can find a new and better way to do shit, then do it. Back in the post-World War II era, the Korean government enacted a population control policy as part of its economic growth plan with slogans like, have only 2 children and raise them well. And with 1 well-brought-up daughter, one doesn't envy 10 sons. Okay, that says a lot about how people felt about having daughters, previous to that, or around that time. Apparently that phrase was designed to combat, again, deep-rooted Confucian preferences for male heirs by emphasizing that a daughter's quality of character and capability actually did matter and could outweigh the traditional perceived value of having, sons. Sounds like Confucianism, just as patriarchal as the Abrahamic religions, as damn near all the old religions. It's almost like we need to shed old beliefs written by old dudes thousands of years ago when the world was nothing like it is now, like a snake sheds its skin, and update our operating systems for a new, different, and better age. Sorry, fuck me for being reasonable and rational. This old post-war campaign dropped Korea's fertility rate from over 6 children per woman in the early 60s, to only 2 in the 80s, which allowed families to invest more in each of the kids they did have, including their daughters. In recent decades, as Korean women attained more rights and gained more independence, a noticeable cultural shift occurred, with men directing more and more of their anger with society at large directly towards women. Professor Sung-Suk Moon, sociologist and gender studies expert at Vassar College, told The Guardian that young Korean men's anger has come from growing pains with societal shifts and South Korea's embrace of neoliberalism. Quote, before democratization, when military regimes ruled Korea, the government could create stable jobs. Up to the late 80s, men with a college education could get jobs in good companies. The economy was expanding rapidly. With social hierarchy changes, groups used to more power or privileged positions will respond with intense emotional reactions to their loss of status and respect. Right? Translation, if your grandpa and your dad got a basic degree and were immediately rewarded with high-paying jobs, stable jobs that provided them with a comfortable living for many, many years, and then you go get a similar degree and don't immediately get handed a good-paying job, you're pissed and you want someone to blame. Now, you could blame yourself for not looking more into the current job market, right? Not looking a little more thoroughly. You could also file, your anger under, well, sometimes life just fucks shit and it's not really anyone's fault. But that doesn't feel as good to a lot of people as pointing a finger and thinking, no, it's your fault, motherfucker. We're dealing with a lot of that mentality right now in the U.S., right? Shit's gotten a lot harder for the middle class in this country in recent decades than it used to be. A lot harder. And a lot of people are rightfully angry and they want someone to blame, which I get. And there are people to blame. The people who sadly are often the loudest and the quickest to point at others who don't have fuck all to do with middle-class troubles and ask you to blame them. The every accusation is a confession crowd. Almost 30 years ago, something happened with Korea's military that added to some Korean men's resentment of modern Western women. Many men felt that South Korea's mandatory 18-month military service was an unfair burden. But at least the military service bonus point system granted veterans additional points in public sector job applications. But then in 1999, the court found this discriminated against women and people with disabilities, and bonus points were taken away, which intensified certain young men's feelings that they were losing privileges, that the deck was getting stacked against them. 2 decades later, a 2021 survey by Hankook Research, or Hankook Research, found that only 38% of men in their 20s believed women faced serious discrimination in society, but 79% believed men did. And a full 70% of men in their 30s saw themselves as the victims, the primary victims of gender discrimination. So now there's more anger from many men towards more women. And now for another interesting facet of this problem, interestingly, South Korean academics have noted that because Korea is largely ethnically and racially homogenous, with no minorities or immigrants, to other and to blame for various societal wrongs, to scapegoat, right? Gender becomes the default dividing line, right? Which does make sense to me. We meet Sachs historically. We love to find someone to blame, anybody different than us. Because of all this, a lot of young Korean men have embraced radical right-wing political ideology and leaders in recent years. Leaders who have given them a convenient target, right? A scapegoat for their anger. Leaders who tell them shit like, women earn less because they put less effort into their careers. Leaders who encourage Korean men to continue to perceive women as threats who continue to receive preferential treatment. Leaders who encourage men to see societal efforts to combat gender inequality as being woke and punitive towards young men, which allows men to view themselves as the victims of feminism. These sentiments have exploded online, thanks to angry, lonely keyboard warriors, leading directly to increasing misunderstanding in South Korea that feminism equals misandry, right? A hatred, dislike, or mistrust of men. As Korean feminist Yoon Kim Ji-young told a Vice reporter, feminists are being presented as misandrous to be silenced and to have their efforts for gender equality stigmatized. Also speaking to Vice, in the same 2020 news piece, a 29-year-old cafe owner, Si-ra Pak, said that because of the man-hating perception, while she cares deeply about women's rights, she does not identify as a feminist. Instead, she calls herself an equalist, saying, I don't want to be called a feminist here in Korea. Maybe I'd say I'm a feminist if I wasn't in Korea, but there's a certain stereotype and stigma that comes with the title here. Many Korean women support women's rights, but barely use the word feminism in public again due to backlash. For example, Son Na-eun from the K-pop group A-Pink uploaded a photo of herself that showed a phone case with the phrase, girls can do anything. That was it. Just a phrase, girls can do anything. The picture went viral, and then she faced intense backlash and was labeled a feminist. She got so much fucking hate for that objectively positive message that she eventually deleted the photo from her account. Man, just so many insecure, small little fuck faces in the world. And it feels like all of them love getting on the computer and hopping on the internet, doesn't it? When they're not bitching in real life about their parents who pay their bills or the girls who won't fuck them because they won't put enough work into themselves to actually become fuckable, they get on their phones and their computers and they just go full caps lock hate. I doubt a single one of Son Na-eun's haters are even half as successful as she is. Fuck them all, Son Na-eun. I hope you still have that phone case. Vice writer Sunny Lee explained in her article that here in Seoul, saying I'm a feminist might put me at risk of being viewed as a person who is okay with misandry. Author Ha-won-young writes that the birth and marriage strike emerged from this kind of shit, from this reality that South Korean women face. It was around the late 2010s when a growing number of women started to publicly question if it was just worth it to get married. Many of these initial women did not see their decision to stay single as some kind of political statement, but those who would follow the 4B movement would. And there are other groups within the 4B movement, or parallel to it. Gong Haun-byul, who works at a Korean television station, founded a group called EMIF, Elite Without Marriage. I am going forward. They meet regularly for business networking or casual activities like camping. The group reassures women who choose to stay single that they are not alone. Gong told author Ha-won-young, for me, no marriage is not just a lifestyle, it's a way of trying to bring down the patriarchy. Lee Na-young, a sociology professor at Chunong University in Seoul, told Young that while 4B is extreme, that's only because it accurately reflects the extremity of the pressure that women are pushing back against. She said the patriarchal norms in South Korea, given its economic status and the educational level of its women, are so relentless that the resistance against it tends to be just as intense. Movements like 4B are a message of warning that women would boycott romantic relationships unless society and men change. Well said. Yeah, if straight men don't want to, straight women to start boycotting them, they should probably learn to not act like petulant, pathetic little boy babies rocking nothing but limp, insecure, micro-peen energy. Remains to be seen how long and how widely 4B will continue to resonate in South Korea on some level. Perhaps it has more quiet supporters than we think. Gong's mother, Helen Kim, said that she supports the movement and hopes for a better life for her daughter, saying, "I faithfully followed the way I was taught by society all my life, how married women should be, how they should live, sacrificing myself for the peace of my family." Some sad shit. South Korea wants to fix their birth rate crisis. They better figure shit out soon. They currently have a long ways to go towards that end. NBC reported on a controversy that emerged in early 2021, writing, "Seoul, South Korea. The advice for pregnant women seems to spring from a bygone era. Make sure there's enough toilet paper in the house. Prepare meals for your husband. Don't forget to look after your looks. Maybe hanging smaller clothes in visible areas will work as motivation to lose weight." These suggestions are not from a 1950s manual about how to be a good housewife. They were shared by the Seoul city government this month. That is wild. Listen up, ladies. This is your government speaking. We've noticed that a lot of you pregnant women have pretty fat bellies, and we think that is gross, to be honest. We prefer to fuck women with flatter bellies that are not gross. So maybe if you could hang up a string bikini in the living room while you're pregnant, or some skimpy lingerie, it would remind both you and us that you won't always be fat. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That guidance was originally published in 2019 by South Korea's Ministry of Health and Welfare and posted online by the Seoul Metropolitan Government. That's fucking insane. The guidance was later deleted after a bunch of backlash and international mockery, but the damage was done. The controversy re-energized the debate over gender roles in South Korea. And that message, certainly not the first time. The Korean government has said some very questionable shit about women. Government officials have blamed feminism for the country's low birth rate on numerous occasions. 3 years earlier, in 2017, the state-run Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs suggested well-educated women with high incomes were being too picky and that they should, quote, lower their standards. Fucking so much good advice. Come on, ladies. There is no knight in shining armor. Get real. Yeah, sure, some guys don't brush their teeth or wash their balls or stay consistently employed, and most of their sex moves come from cringy late-night experiences with blow-up dolls, but their dicks do still get mostly hard and their sperm still swims. What are you waiting for? Take them for a spin. Just put on Thrive, lower your standards, DFT, DTF patches, and you'll be spreading open those legs for things you're not even sure are completely human. Thrive is life! December 2016. When Korea's fertility rate was about 1.2 births per woman, the government actually published a national birth map showing the number of women of reproductive age in each municipality. What the fuck? Women were outraged and commented that the government viewed them as livestock. Yeah, that is crazy. Like you're just some dude looking for kids. You're like, how many breeders do we have in this neighborhood? Well, I'm not going to waste my time here buying anyone drinks. One Twitter user responded by creating a mock map showing a congregation of Korean men with sexual dysfunction. Yeah, love it. How many limp dicks are in this neighborhood? Some online feminist communities declared a boycott of men altogether over this, an impetus for the 4B movement. The government has tried to make up for some bad moves by making some good changes, such as tripling monthly allowances for childcare, okay? Expanding subsidies for small businesses that allow flexibility for working moms, good. Fertility treatment for couples and single women, nice. And reducing mortgage interest rates for parents. Okay, all right, much better approach than, fat-shaming pregnant women. The government also began offering cash incentives of about $900 to pregnant women and about $1,800 after they give birth. With all this cultural context now established, let's take a look at some of the most important moments in South Korea's modern feminist history and how they have shaped society in today's timeline before we hop out and see how the 4B movement jumped over to the U.S.
Strap on those boots, soldier. We're marching down a Timesuck timeline.
Okay, according to Flowers of Fire author Hwan Young, as bizarre as it may sound, it was a respiratory disease from the Middle East that helped begin a new chapter of the feminist movement in the late 2010s. In 2014, MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, swept through South Korea, infecting over 180 people. It was the largest outbreak outside of Saudi Arabia. Reports emerged that 2 South Korean women sat next to an infected man on a flight to Hong Kong, and then they refused to be quarantined. And that led to a surge of online anger. The two women became villains, which I get, but to view them as being some kind of official representatives for all Korean women is a weird fucking take. Regardless, several members of DC Inside, a website similar to Reddit over in Korea, argued that the double standard between the way women and men were treated, argued over the double standard between the way women and men were treated in similar situations. Within DC Inside is a particularly toxic forum called Ilbay Storehouse, or just Ilbay. The Ilbay user base, often described as having alt-right, anti-feminist, anti-immigrant, anti-LGBTQI plus stances. Sounds like a fun group. Sounds like fucking 4chan. Both strangely reassuring and depressing to know that those dumb motherfuckers don't just exist here in the U.S. Maybe we should all email Thrive and just ask them to work on some kind of enlightenment and empathy patches. What started as a squabble on the MERS subforum escalated into broader online warfare, and more women started using the sexist insults they had endured for years against male users. According to Young, quote, in a reversal of sexist phrases used for years against women, there were now comments such as, men should demurely handle housework at home. Alcohol tastes best when served by men, and men are men's worst enemies. One comment also urged men to handle your body carefully like a precious jewel, and to choose to be loved for life after giving the woman you'll marry the most beautiful and priceless gift, that is, your virginity. Within days, a lot more women were flocking to DC Inside to post their own versions of this kind of mirroring, right? Having a good old time, giving a lot of people a taste of their own medicine. In her article for the Berkeley Political Review, Ashley Kim defines mirroring as the replication of misogynistic rhetoric and actions against men as a way to reveal the hatred against women. Haley On, a magazine editor who spent hours on the site, recalled, quote, all the words men used to mock, belittle, hurt, label, shame, and silence us for all these years, we finally had the new language to be able to fight back, make fun of, and scream everything back at them. It felt incredibly cathartic and exhilarating. Yeah, I bet it did. It felt as though we were part of a collective performance arts. It was so shocking then that women internet users could swear and curse like men. Many men refused to believe that we were women, saying there was no way women could use such vulgar, offensive language. But guess what? We were experts of the language that had been hurled at us for all of our lives. The most notorious mirroring was sexual mockery and body shaming, stuff like small penis. Small penis was considered the first genuine gender-based insult South Korean men had ever experienced by South Korean women, per sociologist Choi Tae-sup. Tae-sup wrote, men who had been hurling misogynistic expressions as they liked, or chuckling at the Mrs. Kim or soybean paste girls memes in online communities, literally went livid. Beyond such a radical message that women were also humans, these women's left the earth-shattering message that women can hurt men too. Other examples of mirroring insults are male pest, dicksplain, referring to mansplaining, and parasite, referring to a male fetus. That's pretty fucking darkly funny, a parasite. Oh, I got a fucking parasite in me. Kim Hok-jun, a researcher of online communities in South Korea, said that the mirroring, quote, left men who had had no real experience of having their bodies or faces publicly evaluated feeling naked in public for the first time. Such a sense of humiliation came as a real shock to men, since it was something that women had been feeling almost every day, but which had hardly ever been applied to men. The MERS subforum soon made headlines and sparked heated debates over misandry and online misogyny. Soon a new website opened called Megalia, combining MERS and Agalia's daughters, referring to a 1977. My brain kept wanting to put a 9 in there, another 9. 1977 novel by Norwegian author Gerd Brantenberg, set in a world where gender norms are switched. The site's logo features an image resembling the pinching hand emoji, referencing the small penis insult against men. What is big deal? Why focus on the baby pinky peen? I have more to offer than small peen. Young writes, the satirical play that gave birth to Megalia grew into a wider collective awakening as the site's anonymous members began to confront sexism in their daily lives. They called out things like ads mocking women as shopping-crazed creatures who lived off men's money and school sex education programs, warning that date rape could occur when men were not sexually rewarded after spending money on dates. What the fuck? That's being taught in school? Listen, girls, right? If you're not going to at least suck his dick, don't order a steak when your guy's paying for a date, all right? The Megalians launched a series of donation drives for women's rights groups and a shelter for widely stigmatized unwed moms. They also filed complaints en masse with the education ministry over its sex education curriculum. Many also rushed to portal sites together to downvote or drown out sexist comments on news articles, often using colorful mirroring terms. College student Adeline Kim recalled, "It was exciting to be able to take over the space I'd always thought belonged to men. It was the first time for me to see so many women in news comments. Felt like reclaiming a land where women and their voices had been banned and erased for so long." Megalia also campaigned against illegal spy cam porn, posted on Soronet, a website founded in 1999 that had become the largest porn site in South Korea. A porn site featuring all the molka bullshit we went over earlier. Molka, again, the Korean term for tiny hidden cameras installed illegally to capture voyeuristic images and videos of women and girls primarily. In June of 2021, the nonprofit organization Human Rights Watch deemed South Korea to be the #1 country in the world for spy cam use pertaining to digital sex crimes. And in addition to a ton of these images and videos ending up online on Soronet, also on Soronet are actual ads for date rape drugs. How fucking soulless are you if you work for or run a company that gets ad money from date rape drug manufacturers? That is insane. Megalia users shared links to the website, urging others to see the appalling content and speak out against it. Vice covered a lot of this and noted that Korea's feminist movement is different from postmodern and liberal feminism in the US or Europe because the movement has been led by online communities like Megalia. According to Vice, among the online communities, the most recognized website, Megalia, became a culture of its own. The intention of Megalia, according to an anonymous former user, was not to provoke hatred, but to show the derogatory behavior women experience online in the hopes of creating empathy and change. However, Megalia was shut down in 2017 by the Korean government due to too many complaints. Fucking crazy. To be fair, Soronet was also shut down a year prior in 2016. South Korean professor Yoon Kim Gi-young told Vice that some of the tactics feminine used on Megalia backfired, that accusations of misandry were used by the mainstream media to blind the efforts of feminists. Quote, "Feminists are being presented as misandrous to be silenced and to have their efforts for gender equality stigmatized. Instead, people should focus on the positive changes that new wave feminists have brought about." And now let's talk about WOMAD, which I referenced earlier in the episode. It's a community website founded on January 22nd, 2016 by some Megalia users. WOMAD combines the words woman and nomad. And WOMAD is still around, surprisingly, even though it's more hardcore than Megalia ever was. Megalia prohibited posting homophobic and transphobic slurs. WOMAD does not. WOMAD is notorious for being extremely anti-male, homophobic, and transphobic. They kind of lost the plot over there. Users have also confessed to committing animal abuse. They have unnecessarily mocked Korean war veterans, labor rights activists, and more. The site has a voting system, kind of like Reddit, that allows users to upvote or downvote posts, but it uses a swastika symbol for the thumbs up button. Yee. One user posted an image of a strangled cat and said it deserved cruelty because it was a male cat. Okay, got to be careful with hate. Such a valid and sometimes very healthy emotion. But if you let it consume you, you can become just as bad or worse than the people you hate. Another user claimed she had an abortion because the fetus was a boy. What the fuck? One user wrote, "The beginning of the women's movement should begin with the gay slaughter movement. Gay rights movement equals anti-women movement." What kind of fucking math is that? That equation makes no sense. In the summer of 2016, multiple users claimed they literally had murdered some men by mixing antifreeze into their coffee, or by pushing some dude off a fucking dam into a reservoir. Police initiated an investigation of those claims, hoping nothing came of them based on not being able to find anything online. There have been requests to shut down the community, but Dom Kao, an internet conglomerate in South Korea, dismissed the request, saying there was insufficient illegal activity for a shutdown. No idea how Megalia was shut down, but not WOMAD. I guess it's just sign of the times, just times changing, places more resistant to being shut down. Experts say that WOMAD, like Megalia, a response to and a result of the extremist right-wing views found on DC Inside. That while a lot of the content is vile, it's also, or what it is reacting to, that is also vile, should not be overlooked. Researcher Lee Nam-mi told the Korea Times, this is called the rebound phenomenon. It will take time for the women to calm their anger and get rid of their victim mentality to pursue a truly altruistic feminism. I am worried the movement could be distorted and perceived wrongly by people here. We have not reached a social consensus on shutting down harmful communities like WMAD or ill-based storage. The government should reinforce control against outrageous content online and ban them. Also in 2016, a 23-year-old woman was murdered by a stranger in the Gangnam district of Seoul, which ignited the online feminist movement, as I talked about earlier. Right? Thousands of people visited mourning sites around the country following the killing. They held rallies protesting the gender-based violence. As a reminder, and I'll share more details now, on May 17, 2016, 34-year-old Kim Sung-min, a bar employee, sat inside a toilet stall at a bar in Seoul's Gangnam district for nearly an hour. 6 men entered and left during that time. He did nothing, but then a woman walked into the unisex bathroom, and he came out of the stall and started stabbing her repeatedly. The victim was a 23-year-old resort worker who'd been out drinking with some friends at the bar. She died hours later at the hospital. She'd never met Kim before. The victim's identity was not released to protect her family in accordance with South Korean customs. Kim, quickly apprehended, told the police, as I mentioned, "I did it because women have always ignored me." Despite the fact that Kim Sung-min admitted to hating women because they had humiliated him all his life, police would not say the murder was a hate crime, but one caused by mental illness. On May 19th, the police announced on May 18th, Kim's mother was summoned and confirmed the medical records of Kim being treated for a chronic illness since 2008. Kim was hospitalized 4 times due to his mental illness and was diagnosed by his physician at the time of discharge in early January 2016 that he could experience further episodes if he did not take the prescribed medicine. Despite this, he did not take any medication since he left home at the end of March of 2016. In-depth analysis of Kim's feelings and attitudes at the present state is needed. Kim's psychological analysis will be published May 22nd. It was reported that he had struggled to sit still during or ever since adolescence, told his neighbors he could, quote, hear someone swearing at me. He experienced intense hallucinations and delusions where he was being hurt consistently by women. Following his schizophrenia diagnosis in 2008, he was institutionalized 6 separate times, deinstitutionalized in January of 2016. Because he had stopped taking his medications, he had become delusional and paranoid again by the time of the murder. Seoul police provided the following motive for his attack in an official statement. On May 5th, Kim was criticized for his hygiene at his restaurant workplace and transferred to a kitchen assistant position on May 7th. Even though nobody pointed out the hygiene problems directly to Kim, he thought women slandered him behind his back. This is considered the motive of the crime. So he was stinky, got moved to the back of the kitchen because he stunk, and thanks in large part to severe mental illness, became convinced that he was being targeted because women are evil and they hated him. Kim said in his police interview, I have no antipathy toward ordinary women, and I'm not a misogynist. There were times when I was also popular with women, and there were women who liked me. The crime was due to the actual damage that women have done to me. He claimed women were violent to him, saying, women beat me on the shoulder in the subway, deliberately blocking my way, walking slowly to make me late. I mean, that's sadly, clearly, paranoid schizophrenia talking there. That you think just the people in front of you are like, I want to make this guy late behind me. Walk slower. Hey, Nance, walk slower. Let's make this fucker late because we hate him. He said, and women throw cigarette butts on me. I have endured all these microaggressions, and I felt I could not stand them any longer because they had bothered me, even in my workplace. I thought I'd die if I stayed like this, so I thought I would kill first. I could not stand being hurt. Kim was later sentenced to 30 years in prison. Sounds like that's, probably for the best. Still, he could have possibly gotten even more time had his attack been labeled a hate crime, but it wasn't. A lot of women outraged that officials were dismissing the gender-based motive for the attack. Experts were divided on whether the murder could be classified as a misogynistic crime, especially because South Korea did not have a law about hate crimes or a clear definition of what a hate crime was at that time. Hong Sung-soo, a law professor at Sukmyung Women's University and an expert on Korean hate expressions, wrote, hate crimes are a warning to the particular group the victim belonged to that they could be exposed to discrimination and violence, driving the group into collective fear. The response showed by women after the murder was exactly that. If South Korean society was in a state of a vacuum, would the perpetrator have chosen to kill this woman and said he did it because women always ignored him? Even if it may be hard to classify this incident as a hate crime under strict legal and criminological definitions, it is not a stretch to say this happened under the bigger context of misogyny and is a crime that shares many characteristics of a hate crime. by the end of 2016. Following online rage over that attack, nearly half of all Korean women in their 20s now at least privately identified as feminists. And a full quarter of feminists born between 1990 and 2000 credited that specific murder and the response to it for turning them into feminists. Author Howard Young wrote about the impact of the case, saying, "The murder subsequently inspired a huge wave of feminist awakening among many young women, often called the Gangnam Station generation of feminists, and made feminism a social zeitgeist." Okay, on the heels of that attack, a new popular novel quickly added more fuel to South Korea's feminist movement's fire. In October of 2016, Cho Nam-ju, a former TV scriptwriter, published her novel Kim Ji-young, born 1982. Cho was born in Seoul in 1978, studied sociology at the top women's college in South Korea, then spent a decade roughly writing for TV before quitting to raise her first child. When she was ready to go back to work, she found it almost impossible to restart her career. When she couldn't get hired in TV, she wrote a book instead, and it blew the fuck up. Although the work is fiction, the author said, Kim Ji-young's life is not much different from the one I've lived. That's why I was able to write so quickly without much preparation. In the book, the protagonist, 33-year-old Kim Ji-young, lives on the outskirts of Seoul with her husband and infant daughter. She is exhausted by her monotonous daily life and resentful that she gave up her job at a marketing agency for it. Although, again, fiction, the book also contains real stats that drive home the daily reality for many Korean women, such as, in 2014, around the time Kim Ji-young left the company, 1 in 5 married women in Korea quit their job because of marriage, pregnancy, childbirth, and childcare, or the education of young children. The novel sold over 1 million copies in its first 2 years of publication, becoming the first million-selling Korean novel since 2009. Cho Nam-ju said that the purpose of the novel was to bring more awareness to everyday issues that women face, writing, "I thought of Kim Ji-young's character as a vessel that contains experiences and emotions that are common to every Korean woman." She told the New York Times, "I wanted to write about issues that women could not speak about before because they were taken for granted. I wanted to make this into a public debate." And she succeeded in that end. The book was, quote, celebrated and criticized in almost equal measure, and it sparked a national conversation about gender inequality. A number of K-pop stars controversially praised the book, giving it a big publicity boost, and a member of the National Assembly bought copies for Korea's entire legislative body to read. It was later adapted into a film, and the English language version was released in the U.S. in 2020. The part of the young female protagonist was played by none other than celebrated American actor Nick Nolte, and I thought he did a fantastic job. And of course, I'm kidding. That would be the strangest casting ever. Moving forward, the site WMAD was back in the headlines in November of 2017 when one of its users claimed to have done something even more fucked up than the other fucked up shit I mentioned. On November 19th, 2017, a WMAD user claimed that she had drugged and raped an Australian boy and actually uploaded photos and videos showing her committing the crime. Not the way to combat misogyny. Great way to encourage more of it to happen, though. The 27-year-old Korean woman was arrested by the Australian Federal Police in Darwin on November 27th. She was charged with producing child abuse materials. The victim's mother, a former police officer, discovered after the arrest that the woman's name did not match the name on her passport and that she lied about her previous job in a school. WMAD members somehow argued the suspect was innocent. Not sure what video they watched or what was actually uploaded. Hopefully you can understand why I didn't search for more evidence here. I didn't search for the evidence to see how they could come to that conclusion. I love doing deep research. Definitely have looked up some dark shit that's not good for my, web browser search history. Not going to include child porn in that search history, though. The woman's supporters, what a terrible thing, conducted an online fundraiser for her lawyer, also sent a petition to the Australian authorities calling for her release. The woman was ultimately released on bail and deported from Australia. Hopefully, this didn't happen the way it's portrayed. Hopefully, this was some kind of, I don't know. But May 1st now, 2018. Another WMAD user posted a nude photo of a male model. This did happen. This person was caught for this, for sure. Even though I didn't check these photos either, but there was more documentation. But anyway, user posted a nude photo of a male model who had obtained that photo, or the photo was obtained, with a hidden camera, some of that Molka bullshit. The picture went viral overnight, and the victim was then doxxed and cyberbullied. Was he somebody who had done the same thing to women? I don't think he was. Based on what I came across, the offender was a 25-year-old woman with the last name of On. She was also a nude model, nude as an art model, not porn, they both were, working with the victim in a drawing class at Hong Ik University. They got into some kind of argument during a break, and she decided to secretly photograph him. And then On disposed of her phone in a river afterwards. Later, police became suspicious when she refused to give the phone to them as evidence, and she was arrested. August 13th, 2018, On sentenced to 10 months in prison. And good. Anybody, man or woman, should be punished for doing that shit. The arrest sparked widespread protests held at Haewa Station in Seoul. The protests were not in support of the perpetrator, but rather aimed to spark reform of the judiciary system and how it prosecuted sex crimes in a way that favored men. People believed, rightly or wrongly, that the female perpetrator had received a harsher punishment than thousands of men who had got caught committing the same crime. And if true, that's also fucked. It was discovered that the perpetrator had sent an email to the WMAD administrator asking for the destruction of evidence and later turned herself in, which is how the police arrested her. The protest around this quickly evolved to protest sexism, misogyny, and hidden camera voyeurism just in general. 12,000 women attended the first rally on May 19th. They chanted slogans such as, "Let's have fair investigations," "the same punishment for the same crime," and "My life is not your porn." Protesters also shouted more controversial chants such as, "With dick, not guilty. Without dick, guilty." I mean, pretty good chant about double standards. The protest continued throughout the summer. A police officer told the Korea Jung-ong Daily newspaper in July of 2018, "There is a new movement going on here at the rally in Haewa Station. Usually the organizers would report before the rallies their expected number of participants, but the number of the actual turnout has been higher than expected each time." One organizer told the paper, "I think the rising number of participants at the rallies for women's rights shows the bottled up anger women have felt in being victimized in public spaces. I think any woman in Korea would have checked at least once if they were being watched by hidden cameras in public spaces. Many women also share the experience of being the victims of sex crimes at work. But we have all been taught to think that somehow we are the reason for these crimes committed against us, that it is our fault. More women are taking part in the movement because they have realized that only women can truly stand up for women." Well fucking said, and how sad that that's the reality. The sixth and final rally for 2018 was held on December 22nd at Gwanghwamun Plaza. Up to 110,000 people attended, making it the largest feminist protest in South Korean history. The aim of this rally was focusing on stricter laws against misogyny and sex crimes. The government denied allegations of bias and double standards in the legal system. After all these protests, some South Korean researchers compiled evidence that younger men, they do receive harsh punishments, especially when the victim is a woman. And now for the next bit of gasoline to be thrown on this fire. By 2018, the Me Too movement was gaining more support in South Korea. And one of the pioneers of that movement was prosecutor Seo Ji-hun from the city of Tongyeong. And let's back up a bit to help understand how Seo Ji-hun helped kick this off. South Korea did not have a female prosecutor until 1982 in its judicial system. That year, Cho Bae-suk and Lim Suk-kyung were both appointed. According to author Hwan Young, both prosecutors soon quit over a toxic workplace full of all kinds of sexual harassment. And this harassment continued, it is believed, for most of the other women who followed in their footsteps. Cut to years later, Seo Ji-hun's father always dreamed of practicing law, but he had failed the bar exam and his life took a different direction. He then started to push for his daughter to consider a career as a prosecutor, and she would. Seo chose to study law at the elite Ewha Women's University. Seo became a prosecutor in 2004 in the rural county of Hongseong. She was the county's first ever female prosecutor, had no idea what was in store for her. One Saturday in October of 2010, Seo visited the wake of a colleague's father at a funeral home. After paying her respects, she was sitting alone at the end of a long table in the dining hall when the justice minister arrived. He approached Seo's table, sat in the middle. Groups of men who were sitting nearby gathered around him now, and one of the men recognized Seo, told her to sit next to the minister. Seo was the only woman at the table, was immediately uncomfortable. At office lunches and after-hours dinners, women are often pushed to sit next to the most powerful person at the table to, quote, brighten the mood. She didn't want to do that. She tried to find a polite way to excuse herself and leave. But then she felt the minister's aide brushing her shoulder with his hand, and before she knew it, Seo felt the aide's hand on her waist. She tried to shift away, but then his hand stroked her ass. She pushed his hand away repeatedly, but he insisted that she sit down. She did. He kept groping her in full view of anyone else who was there. None of the people around her seemed like they noticed or cared, including the minister. And following this embarrassing assault, she moved on with her life, tried to forget about it, tried to forget about other similar incidents. When people later asked Saw why she waited so many years to come forward after she did, she cited a remark she had heard from a senior prosecutor who had said, if women want to be recognized as good prosecutors, they should first stop making a fuss about what happens as part of socializing at drinking sessions. Women are not recognized as good prosecutors because they are oversensitive about those kinds of things. What the fuck? Sounds like homeboy was just telling her, come on, let the guys grope you, have fun, right? They like it. Just a more fucked up version of the condescending, you should smile more often. And that is such an absurd thing to say. You know what makes good prosecutors? People being good at prosecution. What does fucking drinking at the bar with your fucking coworkers have to do with being a good prosecutor? Over the years, part of what made Saw reluctant to share her story was the treatment she witnessed victims receive when they would come forward and attempt to get justice. They were consistently accused of seducing men for money, their reputations ruined, they were left to deal with stigma and shame, while nothing happened to the boys just being boys who had assaulted them. There was gossip about an indecent assault at a funeral parlor. The office opened an internal inquiry, but the probe fizzled out. Saw eventually reported the assault to her boss, but refused to respond to the investigation due to a fear of stigma. Finally, over 7 years after it happened, on January 29, 2018, Saw sent an email formally accusing On Tae-gun, the Justice Ministry's Policy Planning Director General, who was that aide, of assaulting her. She wrote, I am writing this after so much hesitation, after countless sleepless nights. On October 30, 2010, I was sexually assaulted by On Tae-gun, at the time the Justice Ministry's Policy Planning Director General, while he was accompanying the then Justice Minister to a funeral. The assault happened in public, causing me unimaginable shame and humiliation. But I saw the Me Too movement grow from a small shout by a black woman 10 years ago into a big echo reverberating around the world now. Now I am writing this with desperation that we should no longer be silenced or give power to future abusers, and in the hope of taking a small step towards reforming us from within, no matter how small and powerless I am, and no matter how long it takes. After 14 years as a prosecutor, Saw was prepared to resign after that email was leaked to the public. Fucking dirty move. The Justice Ministry quickly issued a statement saying, we thoroughly looked into the matter in response to the claim by the prosecutor in question, but did not find any problem with her job placement. Saw then went on live TV for an interview with the most well-known newsman in South Korea. When the host told her that no sexual assault victim had ever come forward in such a public manner before, she said that, quote, something rose up inside her. And she shared a message for victims of sexual assault saying, it is not your fault. Never. It took me 8 years to realize that. And now more women began to align themselves with various feminist groups, or at least they changed their views about what they should accept, right? What they should tolerate. And in response to these changes, more men began to align themselves with anti-feminist groups. One popular group that claims to represent young men's interests in South Korea is New Men's Solidarity, whose leader, Bae In-gyu, has been compared to notorious misogynist and fucking scumbag Andrew fucking Tate. Their YouTube channel has got millions and millions of views, a disturbing amount of views on YouTube. Their content consistently blames feminism for men's struggles. According to The Guardian, Bae's rise reflects the shift of Korea's anti-feminist movement from online anonymity to real-world action. Polished and theatrical, he presents himself in crisp suits, addressing crowds on protest stages or from atop vehicles, blending his rhetoric with broader far-right Korean politics, fervently anti-China, anti-North Korea, and anti-communist. Like his Western counterparts, he positions feminists as an existential threat, extreme misandrists who advocate for female supremacy, with the specific purpose of causing gender conflict. Referring to himself as Hyung, older brother, Bae cultivates an affectionate bond with disaffected young men, rallying them to fund his activism with donations. And there are many others in Korea. And most of these modern anti-feminist content creators have built on the legacy of earlier male rights activists, such as Sung Jae-gi of the Man of Korea group. Jae-gi died by suicide on July 26, 2016, when that crazy motherfucker jumped off a bridge in order to raise the profile of his organization and create a martyr figure for the movement. He fucking crazy. Hate his cause, but can't question his dedication. Jae-gi jumped the day after he posted a message on his website that he was going to end his life to draw attention to his group, which he'd established in January of 2008. He wrote, Dear citizens, now I plan to jump off a bridge over the Han River. I hope you give us the last chance. Please lend us 100 million won, which will be used for paying back debt and seed money of our organization. His colleagues were present for his suicide, took pictures of him jumping, and then posted that on his Twitter account. That's fucking crazy. God, if only he would have slapped on a Thrive DFT bounce patch, right? Maybe drank a Thrive Bones Be Steel smoothie. Dude would have still been able to jump for the photo op, but, also still be alive. Remember when I talked about misogyny being a big issue in South Korea's 2022 presidential election? Bad news regarding that. Yoon Suk-yeol, a member of the ultra-conservative People Power Party, won the presidential election in 2022 on a misogynistic platform. Yoon declared that structural gender discrimination does not exist in South Korea at all. It's all nonsense when people complain about it. He promised to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family and to enact tougher punishments for false reports of sex crimes. So one of those anti-DEI guys. One of the closest races in Korean history, with Yoon winning by 0.73%, nearly 59% of men in their 20s supported Yoon, while 58% of women the same age backed his progressive opponent. Once he took power, Yoon immediately slashed numerous programs for preventing violence against women. The words gender equality were removed from government policies and school curriculums. Really does sound like the DEI stuff. Then on December 3rd, 2024, Yoon announced that he was declaring martial law to combat anti-state forces and accused the opposition-controlled parliament of being a den of criminals. All this fucking familiar rhetoric. Within hours, soldiers surrounded the National Assembly. Politicians were seen jumping over gates, pushing past soldiers to convene for an emergency vote. The decree was ended 6 hours later. Months of mass protest led by women demanded Yoon's removal. Yoon was removed by the National Assembly December 14th. 204 out of 300 members voted in favor of his impeachment. Dude is in fucking prison right now, serving a 5-year term after being found guilty on charges of abuse of power, obstruction of justice, and falsification of official documents related to a failed martial law bid in 2024. In a related trial, prosecutors had sought the death penalty for that motherfucker. I wish they would have got it. Crazy that an alt-right guy was a piece of shit who had to be removed from office and a lot of people wanted him dead? They usually seem like such a cool, kind, integrity-having bunch. November 2023, something else happened that threw more gas on the feminist fire. A woman named On Ji-gu was working the late shift at a convenience store when a young man stormed in, began knocking items off the shelf just out of nowhere. When she asked him to stop, he literally told her, "I'm angry to my bones right now, so don't touch me." A totally rational response. "Hey, lady, I'm not destroying your store for no good reason, okay? I'm very pissed off. I'm angry to my bones right now. I gotta work some shit out, so step back." When she tried to call for help, he took her phone, threw it into a store microwave, as one does. She tried to stop him. He grabbed her by the collar in her arms, then he dragged her around while slamming her into display shelves. While attacking her, he repeatedly said he never hits women, but feminists deserve to be beaten. Okay, this guy's got a lot going on. When an older male customer tried to intervene, the attacker said, "Why aren't you supporting a fellow man?" When the police arrived, he announced he was part of a men's rights group. Of course he was. He later admitted he targeted On because of her short hair. Oh, that'll teach her to wear her hair in a way some dude she'd never met before and fucking hates, doesn't like. Her attacker was sentenced to 3 years in prison. And in a landmark ruling in October of 2024, the appeals court recognized that misogyny was the main factor behind the assault. It was the very first time that a South Korean court had ever acknowledged hatred of women as criminal motive. In April of 2025, South Korea's Constitutional Court unanimously upheld that piece of shit Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment. May of 2025, 4 candidates vying for the open presidential seat debated on national TV, and Lee Jun-suk, a 40-year-old Harvard graduate and leader of the aggressively anti-feminist Reform Party, posed the following question to a rival. This is the weirdest fucking question. If someone says they want to stick chopsticks into women's genitals or someplace like that, is that misogyny? Sorry? Come again? People expressed their outrage on social media, and university students demanded Lee withdraw from the race. Lee had gained prominence by arguing that the younger generation had not experienced gender-based inequality and that policies such as quotas for women were anachronistic. This dude had also gotten suspended from another party, political party a few years earlier, due to being part of a prostitution scandal. Of course, an angry, woman-hating piece of shit, probably has mommy issues and a dick that looks like a used piece of floss. He also placed third in the race for president. Fun. 1 in 4 young men who voted in South Korea voted for that piece of shit because they love that motherfucker. Clearly, feminism still has a long way to go in South Korea. Do you understand now why the extreme 4B movement got started? I do. Holy shit. Now let's pop out of this timeline and hear about how the 4B movement moved over into the U.S. right after we hear from someone else.
Good job, soldier. You made it back. Barely.
I feel like this episode has been begging for some idiots of the internet.
Idiots of the internet.
Okay, so the following comments are going to come from a Candace Owens YouTube short titled The 4B Movement. Should we be compassionate? Absolutely not. Since it's not a long clip, let's hear how Candace defends this seemingly vile hot take.
Have you guys heard about the ultra-feminist 4B movement as a response to Donald Trump's election? Number 1, no dating men. Number 2, no sexual relationships with men. Number 3, no marriage to men. And number 4, no childbirth, which you would think number 4 would be a bit redundant if you're not having any sexual relations with men, but nobody ever accused these women of being geniuses. They are also saying that as one component of this, women are being called to de-beautify themselves. And they have decided that the best way to do that, to really make a statement to men, is to shave their heads. Take a look at this. And in case you're listening to this on audio, we're just showing here a compilation of women that are just a montage of women that are shaving their heads. So what are we to make of the 4B movement? Are we supposed to ridicule these women, or do we choose compassion? I am choosing not to be compassionate. Okay, I'm going to tell you why. It is because compassion is the reason that we are in this circumstance. Have you guys heard?
I hate that those shorts immediately replay. And they edit them so tight there. Anyway, apparently Candace doesn't understand that you can have a child without having sex with a man. It's called in vitro fertilization, Candace. A pretty common procedure. Been around a while. Actually, how my son Kyler was born. A man's sperm is injected into a lady, but not a dick. Not surprised Candace didn't think of that, though. I have certainly never thought of her as a genius. Popular? Oh, God, yes. Opinionated? Very much so. Smart, thoughtful content? Never. Almost never, in my opinion. She's actually one of the people I think of when I hear the quote, "Stop making stupid people famous." Also, compassion is how we got here? No, Candace, it's definitely not. A long history of very real discrimination and very real sexual harassment and assaults and unwillingness to evolve is how we got here. You know, the kind of shit I spent the last couple hours going over. That's how we got here. Sorry to mansplain or dicksplain. All that to you, by the way. Almost every woman I have ever had a serious relationship with has told me at some point that she was raped or molested or both. That's how we got here. Now for the comments, which help illustrate how we are still here. At Denise9412, another gender traitor, wrote in all caps, "Bring back mental institutions 2024. Totally, Denise. Women who complain are crazy. They're so hysterical. Let's bring back asylums where you can be committed for wanting a divorce or not listening to your husband. Make asylums great again." At Paris as fuck Scott. I mean, AF Scott, but posted, "You've been so privileged that your mind can't even comprehend what other women have went through. You always try to act right, but you really have no idea." Well said, Paris. But actually, Candace, who is black, received some racially motivated death threats from 3 white kids when she was in high school. Her family sued, got a $37,500 settlement, excuse me. So she does know what it feels like to be vilified for something that you were born with, like skin color or gender. And she stood up for herself, as she should have. To see her then deny these women the same thing? Oh, go fuck yourself, Candace. At Gouda to Glory 326 posted, "I tried to see your point, but you don't have one," followed by 4 laughing emojis. Oh, God, so funny. Way to weigh in. That was super cool. At Joey7824 posted something. I would say I saw about 1,000 other people post different versions of under this short. "They are just making it easy to know who not to date. Thanks, ladies. Another W for the men." Oh, fuck yeah, Joe. Glad you're not dating any women I know. At Denver Johnson 5640 posted, "Feminists leaving men alone? That's called a miracle." So many laughing emojis. Oh, fuck. I bet Denver and Joe would love to grab drinks together. Just real birds of a feather. Hopefully the bar that they're drinking in gets burned down. At JPN, YX3GK felt the need to write, "No compassion from me." He followed that with 11 laugh emojis. What the fuck? Is that how anybody ever acts? Just as a statement like, "No compassion from me." Oh God, oh God. And then wrote, "Just laughter. I'm a 51-year-old woman. I've been a widow for 5 years. I'm starting to think I'd like to maybe date again. I would like to have someone to spend the rest of my life with. All the woke weirdos are just making that easier for me. Not that any of them are attractive to begin with. Shaving your head just makes you look crazy." Anyone else think that JPN's husband fucking died just to get away from her? At JC David Blackwell 8255 posted, "What those older females don't understand is there's young women that ain't thinking twice about those older females 4B movement." 28 likes for that barely literate drivel. Finally, at Kenny Howe posted, "The last time I had sex was in October 2011. I guess I've been on the movement without knowing." No emojis, but that one did make me laugh. And I think that's enough of the idiots of the internet.
Idiots of the internet.
All right, now let's hear about how this 4B movement bounced over here to the U.S. Unless you've been living under a rock the past decade or so, or become a Jedi Master deploying cognitive dissonance when it comes to hearing any point of view that doesn't align with your existing worldview, you know that advances in women's rights have come under attack in recent years. That the pandemic reversed progress by eliminating many jobs typically held by women, increased the burden of unpaid domestic work, increased gender-based violence during lockdown. In her 1991 book called Backlash, The Undeclared War Against American Women, American journalist Susan Faludi wrote that backlash against women's rights, quote, "returns every time women begin to make some headway towards equality, a seemingly inevitable early frost to the brief flowering of feminism." And she was right? It's a trend that has long resonated around the world, including here in America. In recent years, similar to what's been happening over in South Korea, there has been a growing divide between young men and women's beliefs in the U.S., Women aged 18 to 30 are 30% more progressive and socially liberal than men of the same age. This ideology gap is part of a global pattern, with South Korea just being a more extreme example of what's going on here and in other places. So many young dudes feeling like the world has not given them what they feel like they were owed, and a lot of them want to blame women. Shortly after Donald Trump won the election in November of 2024, Google searches for the 4B movement spiked all around the U.S. A lot of American women feared a federal abortion ban and further restrictions to reproductive freedoms, a continuation of an existing trend. Many announced on social media that they were no longer having sex with men, that they were breaking up with their MAGA boyfriends. One woman shared on TikTok, "Doing my part as an American woman by breaking up with my Republican boyfriend and officially joining the 4B movement this morning." Some women, as Candace spoke about, shaved their heads on camera in an effort to become less attractive to men, to make a statement. White supremacist and far-right live streamer Nick Fuentes, who has somehow become normalized in our fucked up culture, originally tweeted the phrase, "Your body, my choice," on X after Trump won the election. This phrase spread like wildfire on social media, was used to taunt all sorts of women after the results came in by a bunch of really cool guys and cool women. A young woman named McKenna, who lives in a rural conservative state and asked to keep her last name private, told The Guardian that she canceled her first 2 dates after the election. She said, "It's heartbreaking to know that in this country you only matter if you're a straight white man. It's just devastating that we're at that point. So I will not let another man touch me until I have my rights back." According to the December 2025 issue of the Yale Journal, quote, "By boycotting men, not having sex, not dating, not marrying, women withdrew consent from a system dismantling their rights. This act of a collective disengagement mirrors the form of non-cooperation theorized by Audra Simpson and Kathy Weeks, a deliberate withdrawal of labor, intimacy, and recognition that transforms personal refusal into political resistance. If the state could strip them of bodily autonomy through abortion bans, women could uphold access to their bodies as a powerful counter gesture." The U.S. version of 4B reconfigured the movement's agenda. In South Korea, it stood against state-mandated roles and gendered insecurity. In the United States, it resisted a right-wing backlash undermining reproductive rights. American activists refer to it as the Four No's movement, or invoked Lysistrata, a Greek comedy in which women organized a sex strike to pressure men into ending a war. as a symbolic ancestor of feminist non-cooperation. This cultural translation illustrates what transnational feminist scholars describe as vernacularization, the adaptation of global ideas to local contexts. Although its form changed from refusing marriage to refusing bodily control, the same logic of individual refusal as political protest remained. The article continued with, further, 4B's east to west diffusion unsettles Western dominance over defining feminist agendas. A Korean movement shaping U.S. debates reverses epistemic hierarchies and signals a decolonization of feminist knowledge, marking a shift towards multipolar feminist politics. For policy, this calls for intersectional global governance. Such governance could institutionalize lessons from 4B and other non-Western feminist movements through transnational coalitions, feminist data frameworks, and South-South cooperation mechanisms that center localized experiences in global policy making. Interestingly, the majority of the 4B conversations that took place after the election did not acknowledge the ways women and men voted in the U.S. Many in favor of a 4B-like revolution assumed that women voted in favor of things that would benefit them. But Trump won an estimated 56% of white votes, including 60% of men and 53% of white women. Maria Yagoda wrote about that for Time magazine in 2024. She interviewed Korean author Hwon Young for her article. Young commented on the U.S. interest in 4B, saying, although many women in the U.S. vow to embrace the four creeds of the 4B, I see a lot of differences compared to Korea in terms of where their voices are focused. Partly because the whole social context that gave rise to the movement in the two countries is quite different. 4B is at the extreme end of the whole spectrum of women in South Korea who choose to stay single and childless. Many of these young radical feminists in South Korea claim that other feminists, including mainstream women's rights groups, have lost focus by allying with other social minority groups fighting for example, labor rights, disability rights, or even sexual minorities' rights, and vow to support biological women only. In South Korea, 4B is primarily concerned with rejecting marriage, and the other Bs naturally follow as an inevitable result of the rejection of marriage per Young. In comparison, American women are calling for the rejection of sexual relationships with men and becoming less sexually appealing to men. One woman told the New York Times, if we can't control what they do in terms of legislation and abortion rights, we have to do something for ourselves, starting with cutting out the male influence in our life, and making sure we're taking the safety precautions as well, visiting OBGYNs, making sure we are best prepared for when January comes and the years after that. Young said, the fact that the small, seemingly fringe feminist movement in South Korea is resonating with so many women in the United States seems to be a reminder of the frustration and anger women feel about a patriarchal society no matter where they live and despite the cultural, political, and geopolitical differences around the world. And Yagoda writes, but misunderstandings of the South Korean movement aside, many of the other calls to action stateside have rung somewhat hollow, as they seem to suggest getting back at men for letting the second Trump presidency happen. The idea of punishing men for recent affronts to women's rights, as though ladies only do sex for the benefit of male partners, erases many painful realities, including that an unmistakable majority of white women voted for Trump or that Democrats' centrist strategy largely failed. Others have expressed fears and called for a 4B-like feminist movement because of worries over Trump's connection with the Heritage Foundation, an ultra-conservative and influential think tank for many years, decades here in the U.S. The Heritage Foundation has long strongly opposed abortion and reproductive rights amongst a lot of other rights. They published Project 2025. For the purpose of today's topic, I'll just focus on their view of women's rights. The Heritage Foundation was founded in 1973 during the Nixon administration. The organization has had significant influence in U.S. public policy making and has historically been ranked among the most influential public policy organizations in American history. The foundation was established by Paul Weyrich, Edwin Fjellner, and Joseph Coors, the grandson of German-American brewer Adolf Coors. Here's a quick clip from Paul Weyrich, given a speech to give you a feel for the kind of guy he is. Sorry for the terrible audio quality, but it's the only one I could find where he says this. Comes from the 1982 documentary Life and Liberty for All Who Believe.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
The title of that video is The Roots of GOP Voter Suppression. So that's one of the guys. So that's, I don't know, a little concerning there. In an October 22nd, 2003 article titled Patriot Games, published by the Heritage Foundation, Edward Filner wrote, "It's easier to scare someone than to persuade him." That's not nefarious at all. Not even a little scary. Not at all what's going on right now with a lot of fear-mongering. American investigative journalist Chip Burlett once wrote of Joe Coors in 1991 that he was, quote, "a latter-day Lone Ranger urging us to return once again to those glorious, if romanticized, days of yesteryear, where men were men and women's role was to deliver their healthy babies, where there was never any doubt as to what was good and what was evil, where minorities had the good sense to live within their God-imposed stereotypes, and godless heathens could be expeditiously dealt with because they had no souls." The three-headed snake of the Heritage Foundation. What a cool group of loving dudes. A lot of integrity, a lot of empathy. Glory be to Gilead. Commander Lindsay, of Dan, is submitting very well. Thank you for asking. My bicycle is ready to ride, sir. Under his eye. This foundation grew out of a new business activist movement, inspired by the Powell Memorandum. Lewis Powell was an associate Supreme Court justice. His Powell Memorandum became the blueprint for the rise of the radical right conservative movement and the formation of a network of right-wing think tanks and lobbying organizations. On August 23, 1971, before accepting Nixon's nomination to the Supreme Court, Powell was commissioned by his neighbor, Eugene B. Sydnor Jr., a close friend and the education director of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, to write a confidential memorandum for the chamber titled Attack on the American Free Enterprise System. Quote, "an anti-communist and anti-New Deal blueprint for conservative business interests to retake America." This was in response to the American consumer movement, a terrible, evil, radical, satanic pinko movement designed to protect consumers from corporate and government overreach and abuse. It focused on safety, fair advertising, and product quality through activism, such as boycotts, lobbying, and consumer education. Disgusting! When will the peasants just stop fighting and just get fucked already? Powell saw it as undermining the power of private business and a step towards socialism. Lewis Powell was, from what I've learned about him, a lot less about traditional conservative values and a lot more about, fall in line, poor folk. It's a rich man's world. Let us do whatever the fuck we want when we want kind of values. His 1971 memo called for corporate America to become more aggressive in molding society's thinking about business, government, politics, and law. The memo inspired America's oligarchs, wealthy heirs of American industrialists, the robber barons, to use private charitable foundations, which did not have to report their political activity, to join the Carthage Foundation, founded in 1964 by billionaire Richard Mellon Scaife, a true dick, principal heir to the Mellon banking, oil, and aluminum fortune. The foundation pursued a pro-business, anti-socialist, minimally government-regulated country based on American industrialism before the Great Depression. Powell argued the most disquieting voices joining the chorus of criticism came from perfectly respectable elements of society, from the college campus, the pulpit, the media, the intellectual and literary journals, the arts and sciences, and from politicians. Powell advocated for constant surveillance of textbook and TV content, and a total government-backed purge of any and all left-wing elements. Basically just a big, corporation-backed McCarthyism. The memo was confidential, but was discovered by Jack Anderson, a columnist of the Washington Post, who reported on it a year after Powell joined the Supreme Court. Years later, two of the Heritage Foundation's founders, Weyrich and Filner, sought to create a conservative version of the Brookings Institution that advanced these kinds of corporate policies, masking them as God-fearing, America-loving, patriotic conservatism. Right? Just a manipulative grift. It's never been about left versus right as much as it has been about the wealthy and everybody else versus everybody else. Coors put forth the initial $250,000 for the Heritage Foundation. Billionaire Richard Mellon Scaife used the Scaife Family Charitable Trust to donate tens of millions of dollars to the foundation over the next 2 decades. Weyrich was the first president of the Heritage Foundation, and then under his successor, Frank Walton, the foundation began to use direct mail fundraising. By 1981, their annual budget was already $5.3 million. The foundation advocated pro-business policies, anti-communism, but distinguished itself from other organizations by also advocating for cultural issues important to Christian conservatives. In January of 1981, the Heritage Foundation published Mandate for Leadership, a report aimed at reducing the size of the federal government. It provided policy guidance to the Reagan administration and included over 2,000 specific recommendations for the administration to use to advance conservative policies. The report was well received by the White House, and several authors had positions in the Reagan administration. About 60% of the proposals were implemented or initiated by the end of Reagan's first year in office. Reagan would call the Heritage Foundation, quote, a vital force during his presidency. The Heritage Foundation says about itself on its website, the Heritage Foundation and Heritage Action are fighting to restore self-governance so that all Americans can live the good life. No, you want self-governance so corporations can run shit. Conservatives must set the agenda, earn a mandate for the agenda, and govern accordingly. Over the next 2 years, we will engage in Washington to dismantle the deep state and in the states just to restore the family, rebuild American institutions, and restore opportunity for all. All? We are committed to promoting human flourishing for all Americans and championing the policies that get us there. Heritage will advocate for America to protect its sovereignty, defend its borders, and defeat globalism. And make the upper 1% so much fucking wealthier. Fuck you, poor people. Can't wait to fuck your kids on Epstein's Island. Wait, what? I can't remember if that last part's from their website or not. Many Americans now know the Heritage Foundation because of Project 2025, right? The foundation's latest mandate for leadership. We'll actually explore that in a future topic or episode. During the 2024 campaign, Trump tried to distance himself from Project 2025 by claiming he didn't know anything about it or its creators. I actually believed him. It has been followed like a blueprint, though. According to the New York Times, the project was intended as a buffet of options for the Trump administration or any other Republican presidency. The Heritage Foundation began putting together Project 25 back in 2022. Kevin Roberts, the head of the Heritage Foundation, said he thought the government would embrace a more conservative era. 140 of Trump staffers worked on Project 2025, which the ACLU calls a roadmap for how to replace the rule of law with right-wing ideals. Project 2025, a federal policy agenda blueprint for restructuring the executive branch. The mandate for leadership is a 900-page manual for reorganizing the federal government to serve a conservative agenda. So how does all that relate to feminism and the 4B movement? In regards to abortion access, the plan is to have the federal government revive a 19th century law called the Comstock Act, which would ban abortion medications from being sent through the U.S. Postal Service. The Heritage Foundation also wants to reverse the FDA's approval of mifepristone, a medication used to terminate pregnancies. As of November of 2025, the Trump administration had implemented about 40% of Project 2025 policies aimed at restricting reproductive freedoms, according to abortion rights group Reproductive Freedom for All. More recently, on January 8th, 2026, the Heritage Foundation issued a paper titled Saving America by Saving the Family, a foundation for the next 250 years. Passages in the report complain that second-wave feminism has destroyed the American family. The Heritage Foundation issued their statement that welfare ruined marriage and children just 2 days after the Trump administration froze $10 billion in funding for needy families in 5 Democratic states. According to New York Times writer Jessica Gross, the report's authors know they can't tell all women to be at stay-at-home mothers, returning the country to 1960s employment levels for women, because that would contradict their other goal, to dismantle the welfare state and put even more work conditions on parents receiving government aid. So instead, they throw a few tiny bones to modern working parents, encouraging remote work, conceding that affordability of childcare is a major problem, and saying it would be nice if more corporations offered paid family leave out of the goodness of their hearts. But the bulk of the paper is about ways to whittle down government support for anybody who is not part of a traditional married family, ideally with a male breadwinner. For example, the report tells families it is less than optimal for their kids to go to daycare as infants, but offers only an extension of unpaid family leave, a few cash payments and tax credits as a policy salve. The Heritage Foundation authors claim that marriage and going to church will make citizens happier, and that over the past 6 decades, quote, casual sex, abortion, childlessness by choice, and no-fault divorce became normalized while marriage and the natural family became stigmatized. Has the natural family become stigmatized? No, they always fucking do this. Just because everybody doesn't want to do something suddenly, that doesn't mean that thing is stigmatized. It just means we're opening up more options. Fucking drama queens. Gross notes that men and women of different political backgrounds are delaying starting a family and having fewer kids, not primarily because of feminism, though, and not because of some kind of 4B movement, but because they are worried about paying for college, saving for retirement, job stability, the out-of-pocket cost of giving birth, also worry about their children's safety in school because of all the fucking shootings, certain anti-abortion laws that prevent pregnant women from getting proper medical care in certain dangerous situations, like when a pregnancy threatens the life of the mother. The Heritage Foundation also calls for marriage boot camps in its paper. I bet those are fun, as well as public-private partnerships to give monetary rewards for every decade a couple remains married. According to the paper, this report casts no moral judgments on individuals. Rather, it seeks to dispassionately analyze a multifaceted problem that affects all Americans, a problem that society can no longer avoid. For the country's population to replace itself and flourish across generations, a great many citizens must choose to marry, and as a matter of mathematics, couples must, on average, have at least 2 children. The document calls for a tax credit worth more than $4,000 for married joint filers with children and widowed parents. The credit would increase by 25% for parents with at least 3 children, and another $2,000 for each eligible child under age 5 to encourage a parent to stay home and provide childcare. Oh yeah, because $2,000 a year, that'll fucking do it. That'll make it worth it to have another kid. Women in the 4B movement or similar movements worry that all of this, just the beginning, that the powers that be want to roll the clock back even further, because they do. That more and more women's rights will be taken away, more and more incentive will be offered to women to get pregnant, that women will again be largely forced out of the workforce, forced to be in heterosexual relationships, whether they're straight or not, pushed to become basically broodmares whose main purpose is to submit, to serve the husband, pump out as many babies as he would like. Sounds extreme, sounds far-fetched, but is it? Not that long ago in this country, in the 19th century, women were essentially property, given by their fathers to husbands in exchange for a dowry. They had no right to vote, no ability, or virtually no ability to make money for themselves. Most could legally not own property. They had no control over their reproductive organs. Marital rape not recognized as a crime. Neither was domestic violence. Real history is not some fucking Disney or Hallmark movie. It's dark. It's brutal. It's extreme. So to worry about something extreme happening again is not paranoia. It is logical. According to Glamour magazine, it's not too soon to say if the 4B movement is here to stay in the U.S., but even if it isn't, the surge in interest says something about the social forces unleashed by the 2024 presidential election. An uptick in misogyny has already been evident. Just look at the "Your Body, My Choice" comments by men online, similar to what's been seen in Korea, suggesting that this kind of feminist reaction could take hold. And even if women don't explicitly take on the 4B label en masse, the movement's message of bodily autonomy and the anger that drove the conversation in the first place could have a major impact not just on American politics, but on American life overall, just as it has in Korea. Just as gender has become a political predictor in Korea, it's shaping elections in the U.S. The turnout demographics from the U.S. presidential election are still being sorted out, but a few things are crystal clear. The Republican ticket used male identity and gender grievances as a successful political tool, courting the bro vote and attributing Kamala Harris's success to her identity. Young men helped Donald Trump win the election. Many young women are distraught. It's an acceleration of the already widening gender gap in American politics, including an increasing number of young men rejecting feminism. So there you have it. Feminism, at its core, in my opinion, is not radical at all. It's reactionary, a reaction to radicalism, a reaction to the entrenched, institutionalized radical oppression of women that has been going on for most of human history. It's not a fight for feminine domination. It's a fight for recognition and equality. And feminism is rising again because misogyny is. There have been 45 different presidents of the U.S. Every single one of them has been a man, despite half the U.S. population being women. Only sexism explains that at the end of the day. Approximately 88% to 92% of CEOs in the U.S. are men. 93.6% of sexual abuse offenders are men. Approximately 90 to 91% of rape and sexual assault victims are female. 2025 data shows that the U.S. gender pay gap still persists, with women earning roughly 81 to 83 cents for every dollar men earn. The gap is significantly wider for women of color, with some reports showing them earning as little as 50 to 60 cents on the dollar compared to white non-Hispanic men. Anecdotally, just look online. Look at comments underneath some woman's social media posts, and then look at comments underneath some dudes. How much more often are they sexualized? How much more often are their appearances and intelligence insulted and scrutinized? Right? If you can't see that it's fucking way more for women, you're not looking. And on. Right? Want feminism in its various forms, including the 4B movement, to go away? Well, the solution is very simple. Stop treating women like shit. Have respect. Allow them to be equal. And that's it. That's literally it. And that doesn't mean you suddenly can't ever sexualize women like some dudes claim to think, when they hear the word feminism. No, we can all be seen as sexual beings situationally when the moment is right. Just don't only see them that way, right? Don't be a creepy fucking douche. It's not hard. See them as partners, not property. See them as fellow sentient beings struggling to understand why the fuck we're all here, what's going on, what we're supposed to do while we're here, not as just mindless objects who only exist to kick out babies, raise them, clean houses, and get fucked. Doing that doesn't make you some weak cuck. Makes you an evolved man. And it takes strength to evolve. Staying the same is fucking easy, right? It takes strength to have compassion. It's easy to have none. It takes strength to be nurturing. It's easy to be domineering. It takes strength to be vulnerable instead of cruel, to share instead of control. Hey, Lucifina, that's it. Time for today's takeaways.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
Number one, the 4B movement is a feminist movement that began in South Korea, advocates for women to live separately from men as much as possible. No romantic relationships, no children, because that's an extension of the patriarchal family structure that oppresses women. Instead, 4B followers promote financial independence. Some even work together to pool their resources to teach other women financial literacy for a more independent life. Number two, one of the most popular feminist websites in South Korea was Megalia, a forum site where women discussed their struggles and advocated for change. WMAD, a more extreme offshoot of Megalia, was created because of Megalia's ban on homophobic and transphobic language. WMAD users have gotten in legal trouble for committing crimes against men, such as posting child abuse material, posting nude photos of a dude without his consent. That is not feminism. That's just fucking shitty hate. Number three, South Korea experienced a feminist revolution after the 2016 Gangnam Station murder, where a man stabbed a complete stranger to death just because she was a woman. Although officials denied that the murder was motivated by gender, many credited the case with inspiring a feminist awakening in the country. Number four, mirroring is a commonly used technique used by women to mock men online in South Korea. They take sexist insults, misogynistic statements that have been used against them, flip them around, show men how it feels. For example, small penis, right? Little dick, considered the first genuine gender-based insult South Korean men had ever experienced. Number five, new info, male feminists in South Korea do exist. While most men and women distance themselves from the term feminist, as we've stated, there's a growing number of men who support the ideas behind the movement. The UK's Guardian spoke to Kim Min-sung, a 22-year-old activist. Kim was once an anti-feminist. He was exposed to far-right forums at a young age that exposed him to misogynistic material, but then his views changed when, of all things, he started playing little Dungeons and Dragons. Fantasy role-playing games. Predominantly female and progressive community in South Korea. He explained, I kept my mouth shut and just played Dungeons and Dragons, but listening to them, you just naturally have casual conversations. And you realize how the worldview you had from these online forums was just exaggerations, caricatures, and fantasy. Bingo, buddy, and fuck yeah for Dungeons and Dragons. Kim now runs the Korean Game Consumer Society to fight online hatred. He acknowledges that his work is not solving the core of the problem and that men don't really understand why they're so unhappy, but is at least no longer part of the problem. Lee Han is a leader of the group Feminism With Him, which only has 8 active members, but better than nothing. Started off as a book club regarding feminist texts. Now they organize discussions, attend political rallies, work to create spaces for dialogue about gender. Lee's approach is shaped by his experiences in the military, which he described as, quote, miserable. You can't even put your hands in your pockets. You can't listen to music. Can't easily drink or smoke. Having your freedoms taken away is traumatic and terrifying. And that realization led him to feeling empathy for a gender who've had their freedoms taken away on a regular basis for a long, long time. Lee teaches gender equality to military leaders now and senior officers, telling them that their resentment of women is wrong. However, because South Korea is still so misogynistic, he has been prevented from speaking at schools because they complain that he's promoting feminism like it's a disease. However, Lee hopes that by creating safe spaces for men to discuss issues with women, their anger will be redirected towards changing their status quo, or the status quo. He told The Guardian, young men can't express their fears and anxieties. In male culture, especially in Korea, where hierarchy is so important due to Confucian values, you can't speak up to those above you. So where does that frustration go? It gets directed sideways at women, the easier target. Many young men in South Korea are changing their beliefs because of feminism and the Me Too movement, because of those things being a part of daily life. A state-funded survey showed that men in their 20s are more likely than older men, at the very least, to reject the norms of traditional masculinity, such as men should not show their emotions, that patronizing sex workers or arranging prostitution is essential for business, or male bonding, and that military service will make them real men who can easily adapt to corporate culture. Young men are also more likely to embrace cooking, household chores, and having close relationships with others. The vast majority of young men believe they should stop having sex at any stage their partner says no. Fucking crazy, that's a novel idea over there. Young men are less likely than older men to agree with gender stereotypes, that men should be the breadwinners, or that women should pay attention to their appearances. Lee Han also spoke to author Hao-Won Young about his group, saying it's undeniable that many young men resent feminists. But at the same time, we grew up with these women side by side at school, at work, and in our daily lives. It's impossible not to be affected by that. He explained that he grew up disapproving of feminism and that he supported dismantling the gender equality ministry, but then he changed his mind after the 2016 Gangnam Station murder. Lee recalled, by then, so many friends around me were already talking about feminism, studying feminism, or fighting over feminism. Out of curiosity, I went to the site of mourning in Gangnam. He watched women talk there about the sexism, the discrimination, and violence they experienced. And he said, and I thought, why didn't I know about any of this? He read books and took classes on gender equality, and he felt liberated from the pressure to conform to strict gender norms. Lee said, fortunately, young women found the new languages of feminism and gender equality and started to chart a new path to the future based on their experience as a social minority. But young men haven't been able to embrace feminism as their own or find other new language to fill this void. Lee wanted to be part of the change, so he underwent training to become a gender equality and sex education educator, started teaching schoolboys, which was no easy task in the era of anti-feminism and calls to abolish the gender equality ministry. He said, when I asked the boys if women created all of this unfair system, or to whom we should address the grievances about this reality, they knew the answer. Our status quo pressured men not to talk about these issues openly. Saying such whining was not a manly thing to do. And without facing the difficult task of improving the conscription system, they just let young men direct their pent-up anger at women instead. So very cool, right? This is how we change reality. By waking up, by speaking up, by not being afraid to have hard conversations, and admitting we were wrong.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
The 4B movement, why Korea's women are abstaining from men, has been sucked. Thank you to the Bad Magic Productions team for helping making Timesuck. Starting with Queen of Bad Magic, Lindsay Cummins, who forever will refuse to submit, and I love her for it. Thanks always to Logan Keith helping to publish this episode and designing merch for the store at badmagicproductions.com. Thanks to Olivia Lee for some great initial research. Also thanks to the All Seeing Eyes moderating the Cult of the Curious private Facebook page, the Mod Squad, making sure Discord keeps running smooth, and the people on the Timesuck and Bad Magic subreddits. And now for this week's updates.
Updates? Get your Timesucker updates.
Start with a little levity. Funny sucker, Katie Mays, sent in a message to bojangles at timesuckpodcast.com with the subject line of sore balls at the mailbox. Well done, Katie. That was an email I had to open immediately. Katie writes, good morning, Daniel, you sneaky motherfucker. It's Friday morning. I'm leaving for work. I'm listening to the Glory Veil suck as I pull out of my driveway, decide to stop at the bank of mailboxes at the bottom of my street. These mailboxes are situated right in front of someone's house, less than 50 feet from their front door. I pull up to the curb, parking against traffic, jump out, leave my car door open. Timesuck is blasting pretty loudly. Then the guy who lives in the house opens his front door to leave for work. It all happens in slow motion. He walks out. My key is still in the mailbox door. I glance in horror at my car where you loudly say, why, Daddy? Why does spending time with sexy Sandy make my balls ache so? This dude head whips around. Our eyes meet. His confused, mine wide. I say, good morning. I grab my mail as quickly as I can. I stumble to my car. The dude watches as I burn rubber trying to outrun my embarrassment. You son of a bitch, you did it. You got me. I've been listening since the Salem Suck in 2017, and not once has this happened. I must have lulled myself into complacency. At least it wasn't the part where Phil gets jerked off by his dad. Also pretty sure the whole incident was captured on that dude's Ring doorbell, since it always flashes when I get my mail. If I get a letter from the HOA, I'm forwarding it to you. Oh, God, please do. Thanks a lot, you dick. Katie Mays. Katie, thank you for making me laugh out loud abruptly at Starbucks when I first read this. Dude sitting at the table next to Kyler and I looked at me like, what's going on, crazy? Before shaking his head and looking away. Still love hearing about people getting Cummins Laud. I think I always will. I just like wondering what the people who just hear like a snippet like that out of context think afterwards. It's like they've been given one really fucked up puzzle piece, and they just have to imagine, like, how fucked up is the rest of this puzzle? Why, Daddy? Why does spending time with sexy Sandy make my balls ache so? What a strange thing to try and make sense of. Okay, next up, super sack and obvious Pontiac Firebird Trans Am lover Fern S. wrote in with the subject line of trans person experience with U.S. healthcare. Howdy, Father Timesuck, Fern writes. Just finished the episode on U.S. healthcare and thought I might have a somewhat unique perspective on its shittiness. I came out as a trans woman in high school, and now that I'm in college and as an adult, I've started to medically transition. Wait. Oh, wait. Oh, so you don't care about hot rods. Okay. I'm up to speed now. Different kind of trans person. No am. Everyone knows I'm being silly, right? Imagine that there is somebody out there who every time they hear trans, they think people are talking about Trans Ams. And like, what is the fucking ruckus? Why are people so worked up about these cool cars? Back to Fern's message. I've tried to get hormone replacement therapy, estrogen. However, my insurance will not cover it. Because of this, I've been forced to buy DIY HRT, which is a legally gray HRT you buy online from a random website. There are reputable HRT services that don't require insurance. However, most are absurdly expensive, $150 a month. Meanwhile, I pay about $100 a year. Just wanted to say, fuck U.S. healthcare. I just want some titties. Anyways, keep on sucking, you badass motherfucker. Hail Lucifina, I pray she blesses me with a huge rack. Your loyal time sucker, Fern S. P.S. If you ever do a time suck on anything trans healthcare related, I'd be more than happy to provide some insight. In addition to being a trans woman, I know/am friends with people who are either non-binary or trans men. Well, Fern, thank you for sharing that. I hope you get the biggest, fucking best, perkiest, soft enough to really squeeze. Also hard enough to give gravity a good fight. Most symmetrical, perfectly nippled titties in all of the land. Also, real quick, I feel like I'm like a lot of dudes who think this, but maybe don't say it. And then women feel insecure based on misconceptions. I find that most men love titties of all sizes. You know, like truly. I mean, maybe you have like a preference, but they're all great. Great big ones that are really perky, ones shaped more like bananas, tiny ones, bigger nipples, smaller nipples. They're fucking great. Titties are truly the best. Such a strange mixture of comforting and arousing. But enough titty talk. But actually, can there ever be enough titty talk? I don't think so. It's crazy that you were able to get what you need for $100 a year. Guess you get it from China when other sites charge $150 a month. And looking quickly, I found still other places charging $250 or more a month for the same shit. Yeah, we just keep getting fucked by drug makers and drug sellers. If you ever need a new website to get meds from, I mentioned this again recently, try Mark Cuban's site. I think I mentioned it last week. Costplusdrugs.com. They sell a 28-pack of estradiol, norethindrone, acetate tablets, generic Activella, for $23.40, shipping included. Not sure if that's exactly what you need, but, you know, you can poke around there. They have other estrogen-related products. And thank you for sharing. And now another Cummins Law from fellow Idaho meat sack Hunter B, who sent in a message with the subject line of just simply Cummins Law. Dear Lord, Dictator Suckington, you got me so good. I've been Cummins Law'd a few times before, but never like this. I was listening to the newest episode of Timesuck while finishing my nightly workout, sitting in my gym's very small and very quiet sauna. Like most 26-year-olds, I had my podcast cranked up way too loud, did not stop to consider that everyone else could hear it too. What were you talking about, Dan? Oh yeah, the many fictional ways Myra was trying to get Ian's attention. I believe Nazi tattoos were involved. As you continue describing these totally made-up scenarios, I noticed that two other people in the sauna start mumbling to each other. My heart dropped. I pulled out an earbud and asked what they said. At the exact same moment, one of them stood up and walked out. The remaining guy goes, sounds like an intense podcast. I tried my best to explain what Timesuck is and that you are in fact a comedian. I don't think he bought it. I may need to get a new gym. But if there's a podcast worth relocating my entire fitness routine over, at least it's yours. I am kind of sort of sorry for the length of this email, 3 out of 5 stars. You seem like great people. Thanks for bringing so much joy and entertainment, Hunter. Crazy that one of those guys fucking walked out. Crazy that one of those guys would walk out of a sauna after hearing me simply say, she started showing up to work completely naked after getting a swastika tramp stamp and a neck tattoo that said Nazi sex slave, property of Ian Brady, but he still didn't ask her out. So now she started openly masturbating while naked with a Hitler-shaped dildo she called Mein Twatführer, loudly moaning and screaming stuff like, fuck me, Ian Brady, fuck me right now, stick it anywhere you'd like. Why would that offend anyone? Actually, I'm super glad it did. I think it would be way worse for you if those guys heard all that and they were like, fuck yeah, turn it up. He's one of us. Appreciate you sharing that moment. Hope you don't have to change gyms. Good on you for working out. Very important. And thanks for the messages, everybody.
Thanks, time suckers. I needed that.
We all did.
Well, thank you for listening to another Bad Magic Productions podcast. Be sure and rate and review Timesuck if you haven't already. Please don't get mad at women this week. because they're mad at men for treating them like shit. You just add to the problem. Just be nice. Don't say dumb shit like, you should smile more often. Or start telling them how to do something when they never asked you. Or touching them when they clearly don't want you to. If any of that is confusing, you got some more basic learning to do. You truly need to keep on sucking.
Mad Magic Productions.
Did you know that if you completely cover every inch of your skin with Thrive Metamorphosis DFT patches right before you go to bed, you'll wake up as an actual butterfly? Thrive is life! If you don't thrive, you die